Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Wednesday, June the 7th. It is raining and my power has flickered once, but that was a while ago, so maybe it won't flicker again, but at any point I might lose power or internet. If I lose internet but not power, then I'll just continue to record this footage as if it was live. If I lose both, then obviously I'll have to stop. It seems to me we've got yet another tryout event coming up on the 8th to the 11th, which I don't really hate the tryout events because you only have to win like three times on those. Yeah. Whereas the World Championship qualifiers event duel is gonna stay around, I guess, until we get to the actual World Championships. Which, okay, whatever. But there was a tryout event here before, and there's going to be another one. It doesn't do the best job of really rewarding you since it only requires 3 wins. But it also doesn't take up a bunch of time, and it does definitely make a lot of sense at the beginning of the month to have shorter events or no events at all. Honestly, it should probably just be no events. We don't have any of these packs, right? So this is still just around in case you still had the packs. It really should just disappear at this point for me. And we only have 6 of these packs, which only gives me 1 new card, and then a bunch of older legacy cards that I already have at least 1 copy of. So let's just hop into gameplay. Still trying to wrap my brain around the Terror Laments deck that I've built to see if it actually can be played. For the accountability section, I finished Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. It's a playable game. It's not particularly a game I would recommend people play, though. It's just not really worth your time for how long it is. It gets very, very difficult in the last 2 chapters. Just kind of, there's just like no polish there, in that you have a lot of platforming that you could fall off the edge and instantly die, and then have to start over the entire chapter. There's just no checkpoints in the game. It gets weirdly very mystical at the end, which is not super weird for an Indiana Jones story, but it goes on a little longer, and I'd say at least half of the game just doesn't really make sense in that it exists at all, because you're fighting like Nazis instead of fighting the Chinese triad, when the real story that should be there, since it's the Chinese Emperor's Tomb, would be that you're fighting the triad the whole time, and only the triad. And yeah, there's practically no story. The female love interest, who really is just forced into being a love interest at the end, barely shows up in the entire game, and so you never really have any conversations with her, and it is just miles and miles away from what you would expect from a game that is in the same series of Indiana Jones games, such as Fate of Atlantis, which arguably maybe it's not in the same series, but it's, I mean, the Impossible Machine came out, and then the Emperor's Tomb came out after that. and both of them came out after Fate of Atlantis. So they do deserve to be judged against Fate of Atlantis, in my opinion. And by that comparison, they're really, really bad. With the Impossible Machine being basically unplayable, and the Emperor's Tomb being a second generation 3D platforming game being playable, but missing any kind of quality of life improvements you really would want, and in general just being very generic Tomb Raider ripoff. After finishing that, I was thinking, well, let's play the third game in the Tomb Raider reboot, so I started downloading that. In the process of that, I said, hey, wait a minute, let's play a point-and-click adventure game to make more references to Fate of Atlantis. So I had the 25th anniversary edition of Flight of the Amazon Queen, so I started to play that. I made an entire episode 0 comparing the starting sequence and the multiple options of the 25th anniversary edition on Steam of that game. And then I quickly determined that no, actually it's better just to use the original files that are included in buying that version to run it on version 2.7.0 of the ScumVM engine, which created a much better visual effect and shows off the original game unmodified, whereas the 25th anniversary edition modifies things and stretches things, and I think it runs a shader or digital noise filter. It may be that all the images have just been shadered or noise filtered, and it looks like there is definitely detail that has been lost. See, this guy's trap. Anything sent to the graveyard is banished instead. Ruins the tier laments deck. So I really should have considered a counter tier laments deck in that fashion, because now there's nothing I can really do. Yeah, I'm just banishing more and more cards, but I don't have a special summon or anything. Yeah, the additions added in the 25th anniversary of Flight of the Amazon Queen are not worth it. It puts an overlay so you can skip things, which just makes an annoying, like, skip icon show up in the top left. It adds an empty black bar space at the top for kind of no reason, because the overlay icons, at least at my resolution, don't fit in that black box, so they are still hovering over the original graphics. It gives you a option to see all the things you can click on instead of doing your standard point and click pixel hunt where you just have to hover the mouse over things until you can find everything. But for Flight of the Amazon Queen, I don't think that's really even going to be an issue. It removes the original save file and menu system for its own, which is not really changing anything. But worst of all, it just makes the graphics look worse for one reason or another and calls them enhanced, and it makes the audio sound worse. Everything just looks better and sounds better with using a high quality 4x upscaler in ScumVM with ScumVM's new shader system for 4x high quality shaders on top of it. So yeah, I'm definitely not regretting my decision to use ScumVM for most of these ScumVM games, because they just do a better job than any individual company trying to do the same thing. And particularly in the case of Flight of the Amazon Queen, I think you can just download that game for free. I think it's public domain. So you're really only just getting the convenience of having the files in your Steam library. And ScumVM now has icons in its launcher, so you can have a nicely laid out icon system. So yeah, I'm playing Flight of the Amazon Queen. I'm considering playing Tomb Raider Anniversary. If I played Tomb Raider Anniversary, then I would want to play Tomb Raider Underworld, and both of those games would be fairly long. It probably would make a lot more sense to finish the Tomb Raider reboot series, then go back and play Tomb Raider Anniversary. Tomb Raider Anniversary is weird because it's a 10-year anniversary of the original Tomb Raider game that was released actually 11 years after on the 11-year anniversary, so it was delayed a year, obviously. But then, even if you do play the remake of the first game, I don't believe Tomb Raider Underworld, the next game that came out, I don't believe that is a remake of Tomb Raider 2. And then after Tomb Raider Underworld, you have the Tomb Raider reboot. So there's kind of just this false start scenario. Well, this is the weirdest choice I can make, but I think I have to do it. Just hit this guy and destroy this, and then hit this guy and destroy that. So yeah, it may very well not be worth it to even play Tomb Raider Anniversary, which is pretty much what I determined when I first started playing the Tomb Raider reboot, is that trying to play the original Tomb Raider 1, 2, or 3 felt just a little too janky for what it was. Can't do anything here. Still very much feels like there's not really a strategy here. Now, what I failed to do is schedule anything. I looked at some files and uploaded some files, but I am dropping the ball as far as actually scheduling things. I do think I have pre-recorded footage all the way up to like December 31st of 2023, but if we're in the 5th or 6th month now, it would probably behoove me to be scheduled all the way to 12 months ahead, rolling on a rolling scale. And yeah, I'm just not particularly motivated to do the scheduling. And also I can make the excuse that I'm having terrible insomnia, and that's why we're starting late today, is that I woke up 2 or 3 times today and just rolled over and went back to sleep. But yeah, eventually I will have to force myself to schedule some videos, and at some point I'm gonna have to pull the trigger on when and where I'm gonna schedule like Lego DC Supervillains, because that probably is something I would want more of a parallel thing on. Actually, it makes a lot of sense just to know that Lego DC Supervillains should probably be scheduled on January 1st. That way, if I ever do get enough watch time to If I get over the 1,000 subscribers and then am only pushing for the 4,000 watch hours or whatever it is you actually need to get into YouTube Partner Program, pushing for that in 2023 makes some sense tax-wise. It would be fine to be in the YouTube Partner Program this year, but it would be easier just as far as filling out taxes and income if it started next year. Okay, but it is also worth mentioning that the reality is it's very possible none of that's going to happen. And at any point, YouTube could just pull the rug out from under everybody again and increase the requirements. I probably do need to release 2 pre-recorded footage things anyways, because my channel is just getting flooded with YouTube shorts otherwise. To the point where it almost would make sense to have a separate channel. An irony there, if I were to do that, which I don't really want to do, is that a separate brand new channel with just YouTube Shorts on it would probably succeed way better. But there would be no connecting tissue to the original channel, and so nobody would ever be even recommended my other content, which at least right now some people are getting recommended my original content. I guess if I was a big successful YouTuber, I should have made a second channel for the shorts, even though that's, I think YouTube said specifically they didn't want you to do that. I also watched on Amazon Prime, they had this free preview of MGM Plus, a streaming service I'd never even heard of, there is a show called From. It's basically a family gets trapped in this magical village and monsters come out at night, and they're trying to figure out what's going on and how to survive. And it felt very much like maybe Wayward Pines a little bit, which I hear the book of Wayward Pines was a lot better than the TV series. It felt very much like a much smarter way to do Lost, instead of having a big island with a lot of sets and a lot of just non-controllable shooting locations. If you're shooting in a forest, unless the forest is actually a set, the lighting conditions and all of that probably were blowing the budget quite a bit on Lost. But by having basically that same mysteries and actually delivering on some answers on the mysteries, at least a little bit, it felt a lot like Lost, but then it's more limited in the number of people and it's more limited in the scope of the city. Which I think that benefits them. But the biggest problem with watching From on Amazon Prime, and why I would suggest not doing that unless you have MGM Plus, is that they only have a free preview of the first season, which I will just spoil a little bit to say ends on a cliffhanger. And because it ends on a cliffhanger, I have screwed up by saying yes to that. Has a lot of stuff to discard. So what can we summon now? 2 level 4 monsters for 25. Hmm. 24. Let's see. What I probably should have done is activate this effect from the hand. So then I could have sent that into the graveyard. So I could have sent that into the graveyard. Which wouldn't have activated anything anyways. I mean, that's not a terrible play, but it didn't do enough. Yeah, so I can't recommend watching From unless you can watch Season 2 and set up for Season 3, which is going to start airing, which really just means the whole series is not in a good position to be watched. And yeah, it is a catch-22 certainly to say don't watch a mystery show until it's fully completed, because it will almost certainly get canceled. And then it won't ever actually have an ending. Although a lot of these mystery shows have no interest in finishing anything anyways. Also, with the writer's strike, you're in a terrible position to start watching any show at this point unless it's already finished. But yeah, I'm running out of things to watch on streaming services in general. I watched that latest Saw movie, Spiral, from the Book of Saw, which doesn't feel quite like a actual Saw movie. I could banish everything here. Let's just wait and see what happens. I think I'm ready just to go back to Zodiac Tri-Brigade for a little while, because I just don't understand these tier limit cards. I just am not getting what the strategy here is, and I need to play and potentially win more against tier limit decks, which seem to only come up against me when I'm playing Zodiac Tri-Brigade, to see what their strategy is. It may be that I just modified the tier limits deck way too much and I broke its strategy completely, which is very possible. And you know what, this Dark Magician decks, they seem to be pretty evergreen too, as far as seems like you can always play a Dark Magician deck. So I probably should just try to build something like that, but I don't have the crafting points to build anything at this point. This would be the second time I've just given up and gone back to Zodiac Tri-Brigade, but I mean, yeah. You create a deck, it becomes your favorite deck by default. You stick to that deck way too long. Unlike the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, the first series in particular, you can't, though, keep upgrading your favorite deck. And even in the anime series, that's pretty obvious, in that many of the random enemies you fight don't come back with upgraded versions of their decks. There's a few people that do. The Harpy Ladies um, deck gets brought back 2 or 3 times, but it gets defeated every time, even when there is an upgraded version of it. And everything kind of gets defeated once you get to the first spin-off anime series, and then your XYZ summoning, and XYZ summoning destroys anything that was in the first anime series pretty much. Yeah. I know I watched some other stuff, but I can't even remember. And none of that has anything to really do with video games anyways. It's just I'm not making a lot of progress as far as doing a ton of gameplay footage recording. Although I have done a good job in the past 4 or 5 days. I've been pretty steady on the amount of footage I've been making. It's still probably nowhere close to the massive amount I was making before. Alright, back to Zodiac Tri-Brigade. 1 more win for Gold Tier 4. So, right now, I think the Summer Games Fest is either happening or it's going to happen pretty soon, either today or tomorrow. So, I think by Friday we'll have a bunch of trailers and maybe announcements around the Summer Games Fest, but I could be wrong. Let's see. Well, I clicked more and it just took us to the news section. That's not more information specifically around the Summer Games Fest. So the first action on Zodiac Tri-Brigade, because I have Ash Blossom, is to cancel his Foolish Burial. This may be a Tier Limits deck. Special summon 1 level 3 or lower Psychic. Noah Punk. And I couldn't use Ash Blossom to cancel that. This is a... looks like Punk deck. I've never even heard of this. NOH Punk. But then that jumped over to just the Chaos Ruler, 1 tuner and non-tuner card. So this may just be a tuner deck. That brings back this guy. You gain life points equal to the monster's original attack. And then those two give us the zombie vampire, which is XYZ monsters. Each player sends 4 top cards from the deck to the graveyard for the zombie vampire. Which, yeah. Say yes to this, and that's just bringing back this character. Alright. Send that to the graveyard. Add this to the hand. And if I was playing the tier limit deck right now, I would have no chance, or at least no way of in my mind as far as how to defeat this, but clearly I could summon this Zodiac character and get to Zeus as soon as it's my turn, and then clear the board that way. Or I could bring this out and summon the big Zodiac guy and banish a single card, this guy, and then attack those two. Okay. So let's just start with activating this. He shouldn't be able to really activate anything, but weirdly he was prompted to activate something. And this action alone is reducing the number of cards in my deck, which is lowering the randomness of my draw chances. Okay, summon this. You can activate something out of the graveyard. This is one of those Sword Oracle cards with the exchange of spirit idea. Target up to 3 cards in any graveyard, or up to 5 if exchange of spirit is on the field. Let's just activate this, even though I don't think this is going to do anything. But I could see them potentially trying to bring back that card to the extra stack. That wasn't even one of the cards they picked. Okay. So we'll hit this. We'll hit this. I'm gonna run out of time if I'm not careful. Go ahead and activate this. Toss that. Attach that. I didn't actually know that was in the graveyard. Go ahead and special summon this. Go ahead and activate this. I think best is to target this one. We can't, so let's go ahead and target this one. This is definitely still a slow process, but I don't see it as anywhere as bad of a process as it could be. I'm just going to push this further. Yeah. See, I think that's as good as it needs to be. You hit this with that. You hit this with that. You hit this with that. Go go ahead and upgrade to Zeus. Yeah, I guess the weirdness of the timer is that you're just chipping away from your reserve when you're playing well, and then you get a little bit of refillable reserve in the time each turn. But if you just continuously chip away from that original 200 seconds, then you're going to have a real trouble. Let's see. Just a massive amount of difference there in confidence playing with Zodiac Tri-Brigade. And the confidence, I think, is definitely playing a big part as to why I'm succeeding. Is that, or why I succeeded there and really haven't succeeded much at all with the tier limits deck. It's competence, if not confidence, in that I actually know what I'm doing. The Mario Brothers movie is going to be released physically next week in the US and Canada. A power-up edition includes a number of bonus features, seemingly 30 minutes of bonus content, which it might be a little bit of a controversial take, but I would say you could probably find the power-up edition used in 6 weeks, 6 months from now on sale. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they overprint the discs. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of kids buy the discs while they're still hyped about the movie, but then really aren't going to want to watch it more than once a year. And by the time you hit like the 6 month point, then you might very well have it on streaming, which would be good enough for most kids anyways. Now there is, particularly in kids movies, a reason to have a physical disc if you're driving around and watching it in a car in particular, but outside of that example, streaming is perfectly fine for most. So it probably would be a smart move to hold off on it if you can. The problem there, of course, is if your kids really want it, then it gets difficult as a parent to say, let's wait, or no. I assume Redbox still gets discs close to their launch and release, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Mario movie is in every Redbox rental vending machine for months, although it might be also sold out in that case. I don't know how many copies they do. Alright, let's keep on playing. I want to lose momentum here. I do feel like I am going to lose momentum fairly quickly. And we do have a decent amount of news, so I may want to just call this after this game. One of the worst scenarios that could happen is that I could get a lot of surrenders, and then there just won't be a final satisfactory game to play if I just constantly got surrender after surrender after surrender. That would make sort of boring footage, but it would be very good for my ranking. So this guy's being stopped. No, he isn't. Let's see if we can stop his actions by doing that. Which I guess that's the danger of activating something by sending it to the graveyard. Well, I'm pretty well set here for Zeus attack. He's got 2 cards, and if he were to play something in the graveyard, activating that, I have another Call of the Graveyard. If he were to place a item down, or 2 spells or traps down, I can destroy that. Or if he plays an effect monster, I can destroy that. All that extra on top of what Zeus can do. So if I were him, I would potentially surrender at this point anyways. I can barely even read this. My eyesight seems to be not really great right at the moment. Then probably half asleep still. But their power-up bonus features is getting to know the cast, leveling up, making Super Mario Bros. Movies, Super Mario Bros. Movie Field Guide, Peach's lyric video, and leadership lessons with Anya Taylor-Joy. Is that the actress who plays Princess Peach? I would suspect yes. Otherwise, that would be the producer or director. Yeah, I think Anya Taylor-Joy is the actress who voice acted Peach. It definitely seems like all of those extra features are kind of behind the scenes standard movie stuff that I'm not sure a kid would really care about or even want to see, breaking that fourth wall. I would feel like the better extras that would make sense is to have Mario and Princess Peach say something or do something, a trivia game, something that's more interactive and fun. I don't know what a 4K UHD uses, but I suspect it's still some form of Java application. Oops, I guess I should have activated my ability there to make the menus. Yeah, which, yeah, maybe there's a better system that needs to be implemented instead of still using Java. But if it is a Java system, it would not be crazy to have World 1-1 of Super Mario Brothers playing on the player, as long as you're not emulating World 1-1, but you've actually compiled it into a Java version, which I think has probably already been done multiple times over. That would be an interesting thought. A history of Super Mario Bros. Games, a retrospective of Nintendo in general. All of those things don't really feel like they are being added as extras, so I can't imagine Nintendo wouldn't have appreciated that, but clearly the movie is trying to promote the movie and the movie itself, and to a second extent, Jack Black is Peaches. I also saw Tenacious D put out a song, so seems like they've opted to get some success off the back of his Peaches video. There's a exclusive Walmart gift set version where it's a big star, which, okay, if you want a nice looking thing on your shelf, this kind of makes some sense. Assuming it is made well quality, which I suspect it probably isn't that well quality. I think there's an implication here that this lights up that's probably not true. And so I bet this does not look as good in reality. As far as a disc holder, it's different, and that's kind of the problem with disc holders, is that once you start to have any kind of collection of DVDs, Blu-rays, whatever, you kind of want all of the boxes to be uniform in shape. They can be unique visually as far as what's printed on them, but you don't want the standout crazy limited edition sets for anything other than your most favorite movies at most. Generally, once you get over to 200 discs, though, you don't want it for any of them. It just becomes the odd man out, and it gets in the way of your sorting systems and your organizing if you have a giant star that has to then be put to the side or in a different place. This definitely looks like something that could be knocked over a lot and could fall off a shelf and drop the disc. So, yeah. Walmart often has exclusives, and Best Buy sometimes has exclusives too. But I don't find many of them actually special. Often you'll see like steel case versions of discs, and there's just no real great reason to get a steel case version, because again, it's just going to stand out. But yeah, the big news there is it's coming out. Also, what's coming out is a Siberia animated series produced by What the Prod. Which, okay. You know, I haven't played any of the Siberia series, but it does feel like it is a fairly narrative-based story, and kind of a weird story at that. So it might make a lot more sense to watch a animated series than to actually play the game, which may be bad for the game series in that case. Although, when done well, the animated Castlevania series didn't lead to anybody not wanting to play the old Castlevania games. There weren't any new Castlevania games to really compete with it, though, come to think of it. The Witcher TV Netflix series that's live action didn't really have anything to do with the Witcher 3 game, so there was really no competition there. The Mario movie is not really going to replace any playing Super Mario Odyssey. So I guess the general assumption there is that as long as your game comes out first, you will get enough people buying the game before an animated series comes out later. Persona might be an exception to that. The Persona animated series might very well act as a direct replacement for playing some of the Persona games, which are very long and grindy, and I could see people not wanting to commit to that. I'm going to make this the last game, and hopefully I'm not going to have to run to the bathroom, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. Let's see. The new Pikmin 4 trailer reveals a character creation system, which this character does not look particularly interesting to me. You're not going to see the character very often. It'll be very zoomed out anyways. And I definitely saw when they were a different video where they were talking about and reviewing Diablo 4 and how Diablo 4 has a very well developed character creation system too. And in both Pikmin and Diablo's case, I really have to question if there is a reason and a need to have a character creation system. since it's just not the kind of characters that are going to be talking to each other in like zoomed in look at the face type narratives. Maybe that does actually happen in Diablo 4, but the vast majority of Diablo 4's gameplay is going to be very zoomed out, like Pikeman. Right, they dark fusioned me. This dark fusion trap probably is a good one to consider adding to my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck. Yeah. I'm not even gonna really bother to watch this trailer though, so since it's a Nintendo video and I want to get Content ID claimed. They did put out a new article as far as attacking Nintendo for Nintendo and Valve. I think Valve deserves a lot of the blame too, attacking Dolphin's release on Steam. And I still kind of would like to see a lawsuit come out against Valve so that Valve feels at least a little bit of pressure so that they don't make a habit of contacting potential people who would sue or send cease and desist letters to people trying to release software. This is still all the same turn, isn't it? Yep. So I don't think I can really do anything more. So I'm gonna end the turn. But yeah, the fact that a major mainstream video game journal site has come out with an article attacking Nintendo directly for that decision is a step in the right direction. And in the headline, they're calling Nintendo hypocritical. Meanwhile, Reddit is still imploding and people are upset with Reddit's things and its API changes, and there's now a growing number of people who are either staying suspiciously silent around the Reddit API changes or swooping in and trying to do Ask Me Anythings or posts about other things. So maybe they're trying to do things that were already planned, or maybe they're just trying to get more attention as less people are using Reddit now, flooding the front page. Moving on, Capcom Sales update says Resident Evil 4 Remake is at 3.7 million and Monster Hunter Rise is at 12.7 million. They seem to update this every month, and this is a Gamatsu article, so you could check out the full numbers if you want. We do kind of know, though, that we are in this weird situation where it doesn't seem like Capcom really wants to remake Resident Evil 5, and I don't know if they really thought it through or had a plan, because now they're just trying to survey to see if they can convince people or use a survey to justify not remaking Resident Evil 5 next in favor of remaking something else, which I don't know what else they could even remake. I wouldn't be surprised if Capcom just lays off a bunch of people at Capcom now and says, well, we've made as much money with the RE4 remake as we can. Let's just reduce our head count and stop with the remakes, and then have just a main team. Yeah, and I don't think I can do anything else, so I'm gonna have to run to the bathroom. That's what I thought was gonna happen. So there's a surrender, which certainly won't help my rank. 3 wins to gold tier 3. And I'm gonna just leave the screen here, pause the recording, and I'll be back in like 20 minutes. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I'm probably not at 100% from being sick before. Daily quest wise, we have done everything, so there really isn't a lot of reason to continue to play other than just trying to work our way up unranked. And honestly, if I was going to do that, I probably should just do that off screen. I do have a duel live, but I'll do that later. So let's just focus on the news. Team 17 has found its new CEO. Steve Bell, the co-founder of global integrated marketing agency Iris, will begin his tenure next year. So, yeah. New person in charge. Questionable as to what that really changes one way or the other. Let's enable the blur. Yeah. Let's see. I did want to talk about this, even though I really don't have a lot of free time. And Lego has this new initiative where they're promoting football, aka soccer, to girls in particular. So they have specific footballers, female footballers, minifigs that they're selling in this set. Now, this looks to me like a much more reasonable soccer set compared to the foosball table set, which was somewhere around $260 to $280. But unfortunately, it gives you considerably fewer options to make your own custom characters. You could almost certainly make each of these characters with just buying the foosball set anyways. And in the foosball set, you get something that approximates a full soccer field, where this is just a half soccer field and one net, one goalie, and they are just throwing in minimal extras. Like in the foosball set, you don't have a camera, fine. You don't have these side pitches, which just looks like there's some cones and maybe a Gatorade thing and maybe some ice, and then there's a benches here to sit on, which in the foosball set you get a lot more benches, but then you don't have rafters or stands for the audience, and you don't have an audience in the foosball set. So overall, if this was a set that was like $60 and then you doubled it up and you got a full soccer field, or they came out with a series 2 where there was the other side of a soccer field with other players, then that might make sense, because the other players would want to be in a different color outfit instead of everybody being in orange. And you can't just buy 2 of this and really have a field that feels like a team is playing. Honestly, I don't know enough about soccer to know if 4 people on the field for one team is even the right amount. I don't think it is. I think it's much closer to 5, maybe 6 people are supposed to be on the field at a time. But 4 seems at least one too few. And I'm excluding the goalie on that count. Yeah. So there's a lot of extra stuff here, but the playability on this seems pretty low. And the price on this is just way too expensive. Also, the sales pitch on it seems to be very backwards, in that, from what I had heard, people's interpretation on it, the message seems to be that Lego feels girls are not comfortable doing other things, uh, such as, I don't know, maybe playing baseball or being truckers, driving trucks, things like that. But they are comfortable doing soccer, um, or they're more comfortable doing soccer. So instead of encouraging girls to go into other fields and diversify, they are pandering to girls that like soccer already, which just doesn't really make any sense. In a certain level, that's just a self fulfilling prophecy. Um, if I said in the 1950s, women are only comfortable being secretaries, therefore we will only teach women to be secretaries, well, you've just created a catch 22 loop of logic, and that is pretty much exactly what they did say in the 1940s. It's making a big assumption that all women are the same or all girls are the same. In general, we should move past that. Lego should move past that, and it's just pandering to say that girls should not be challenged in their preconceptions and should just be pandered to do the same things over and over again. I see this personally as somebody who's in IT a lot, of people who are older than me or about my age, and that a lot of women were not pushed into doing anything computer wise or technology wise, and they have found ways to justify not adopting with reality and not learning how to do even the simplistic things that an average person should be able to do with technology. They don't know how their iPhones work, which, fine, if you want a simplistic iPhone, that's half of the phone users, so that's reasonable. But you should know how your iPhone works. It's been dumbed down. This is hardly Unix or Linux that you're working with. So, but yeah, I particularly feel like, particularly when it comes to technology, I've seen it a lot where people just check out on technology and they just think that it's an acceptable answer to say, oh, well, I just don't understand technology. That's somebody else's job. That's my husband's job. That's my boyfriend's job. It's like, no, you're supposed to be a strong, independent personality like everybody else. You've got to learn how to run your own life, and you've got to be able to continue to learn throughout your entire life and not just find excuses to stay ignorant. And the message really should be pushing girls to do everything that you would push a little boy to do in Lego. Yeah, that's what I grew up with, and I think that was a very good message, is that girls can do anything boys can do. I think that's the empowerment you want to portray, and that while there may be slight biological differences, it doesn't really matter. In almost every case, you can overcome those differences, and each individual might have slight biological advantages that would make them more adept at doing certain things. But yeah, as for the actual set, this is a very poor playset. But it is what I was suggesting, like considerably fewer Lego pieces being wasted compared to the foosball set, in that you just have a flat base plate here that is their smaller gray square base plate, and then a single layer of different colored green face plates to make the grass, and then this. But by far, I would want the right number of people, probably 5, and honestly, you'd want the whole team. So, and usually in football, if Ted Lasso is to be followed, I think you have somewhere close to a dozen team players that you cycle in and out on soccer. So there should be a lot more characters like that. Lose the audience if you have to. Lose this whole section. You lose this whole section. Yes, there's a little trophy here, so maybe you keep a trophy somewhere. but like lose all this stuff so that you can have a full team of the mix and match characters, which I really like the mix and match characters on foosball, on the Lego foosball set. So if they just sold those same minifigs as a separate thing with a smaller pitch, that would be worth $120, $150. Whereas this is priced way too much for half a field and not enough minifigs, and still not really being playable. These characters have their feet on upside down base plates, so they would just slide on the face plates. They're not locking down for any pose, so this would not be a very good movable set anyways. It does look like there's a bar here to move this one back and forth and pretend like you're playing, but you would have to hold these characters by their head and just swing them to pretend like they're kicking, and you definitely couldn't pose it as an iconic scene. You could with modification pretty easily, but by default they are just sliding on top of flat base plates, and their legs are going to be rigid, pointing downward every time. But yeah, unfortunately Lego is just not really doing a great job these days as far as keeping the price down low or innovating with good sets. That is a great example of a set that could have been great, but then they're trying to target the wrong audience, or they're trying to make it more expensive than it should be, or cheap out on even the piece count. A new Capcom Showcase will take place next week, according to Video Games Chronicles. And then I wanted to point out, I have not really seen a lot of Zelda cosplay or Link cosplay since Tears of the Kingdom came out. In fact, I've pretty much stopped hearing anything about Tears of the Kingdom. So I think people probably have played it and enjoyed it, but there's probably not anything special or new to say here. Now, as for this specific cosplay, I mean, I guess it's in line with Zelda, although it's really not in line with her personality to be kind of in a bikini outfit. I don't think Nintendo has ever put Zelda in a bikini that would, or anything that's ever even shown off her legs or belly. So this is definitely taking some liberties. It also seems like this outfit, if she was wearing it in public and her hands were moved, would almost certainly see directly through the top and see her nipples. And honestly, I am not sure that these are barely even covering her nipples in the first place. This may be just swinging below that. I guess I will say, if you want to see a bunch of nipples, one of the things I watched on Amazon Prime was 3,500 Years of Longing, which is this kind of romance story. Lady finds a genie in a bottle, and then the genie tells her a bunch of like romance like stories, or stories as how the genie screwed up romances. And it is a significant amount of female actors in the movie, but also a lot of them are naked. So you see a lot of toplessness, a lot of just full frontal nudity. Although I will warn you that a lot of the nudity is also from extremely, extremely obese ladies. So I wouldn't really call any of it particularly erotic. I kind of wish the movie had more of a narrative arc than it really does, because it kind of just fizzles out, I think, at the end. We still are seeing a lot of 2B cosplay years later now. In fairness, the Nier Automata anime is relatively new, but it has been extremely, extremely consistent as far as cosplay of 2B. She is clearly a character designed to be cosplayed, and there's just a lot of details certainly you can do in making an outfit that looks like 2B. Although this outfit, honestly, I'm not sure actually shows up in the game. I'm not sure there ever is a skirt with a pattern like this. And the sword might be slightly off, and the top might be slightly off, but it's recognizable as long as you have white hair and are covering up one eye or two eyes. It's pretty recognizable as 2B. And then, yeah, that's something else. A Betty Page comic. I was gonna look into that. Betty Page, one of the first pinup girls. Pride Month's still going on. I wanted to point out this picture. I'm not trying to name and shame anybody here, certainly. I think their intentions are great, but there is some problems here with this fan art in that you have these bleeding colors, which maybe that is to imply that everything is a spectrum and everything mixes together, although it's not really mixing together with the color above it, it's bleeding downward. So it's like these colors run, which is a bad phrase, or that it's bleeding, and so you're messing up the new pride flag with the transgender colors added. And then you've got some furry animals here that, in all honesty, I don't think the LGBTQ plus communities, the official companies that would claim to be in charge of those terms and phrases, I don't think they embrace furries. I just don't think they do. That probably technically falls under the queer phrase and spectrum, to being attracted to either 2D anthropomorphic animals or being attracted to people who have fursonas and are in furry outfits, but it's just not something that I think they really embrace or focused on. Right now, clearly they're focused on just transgendered rights at the moment, while maintaining everything, all the progress they've made with lesbian, gays, and which each of those categories and letters has slightly different focuses, and they're working together to assist each other to get more rights. But yeah, I don't think they're into this. They definitely are not into hebophiles and pedophiles who also try to push the idea that they're in the queer spectrum. And honestly, being attracted to 2D anthropomorphic animals is only a couple of steps away from being attracted to underage children. Like, you are talking about attractions there, and there clearly have to be some attractions that the LGBTQ plus community is not going to outwardly support or promote. Zoophiles, people who actually want to sleep with actual animals, bestiality, like they don't support that, I'm sure. And people make slippery slope arguments that they would support that, but I don't think they ever really would, because there is really a matter of consent when you're talking bestiality or children, that those animals and children can't really give consent, where a fake anthropomorphic animal, furry person in a furry suit can give consent. And then there is always the argument about how much kink should be highlighted or focused on in the pride parades and pride promotion in general, as far as are these identities, like, is being gay your full identity day to day, something you have to live with even in non-sexual situations, versus being into furry porn, which is something that's only something that might happen in sexual situations for some people. Although, in fairness, a lot of furries do feel that they need to be in their persona 24/7, and they need to play that character or feel they are that character. So it is their identity for most of their life. But yeah, there's a danger in trying to help, certainly, putting out things like this. Or you could put on your tinfoil hat and say, actually, this is actually some anti-LGBT art that's parading around and was specifically created as a false flag type Poe attack, where they try to push it to such an extreme that it makes the people who actually do support Pride look ridiculous in what they're trying to accomplish. Yeah. A extremely conservative person could see this picture and go, oh yeah, that's exactly what they want. They want everybody to be furries. And they can jump to conclusions and make assumptions off of something like that. So you potentially are making ammo for your against yourself. Moving back to video games, after a regulatory push, Steam now shows the lowest game prices for EU players. The EU wants the online retailer to offer more transparency to users, and Valve is complying with its newest directive. Now, when it says it shows the lowest prices, I believe what they're actually going to do is say what was the lowest price in the last 30 days, which does not, yeah, if we'll look at this picture, will this open up? Yeah, it's normally this price, its lowest has been this price, right now it's this. It doesn't really change much if you have the SteamDB plugin installed, because you are already getting that information anyways. It's just now officially integrated into the Steam storefront if you happen to be in the EU. And noticeably, they are not doing that for any of the other places around the world, because obviously they know that you're going to lose some sales there. Nobody wants to be told, even though it's almost certainly the case, that they're overpaying for something, and if they had just ordered it during a sale a week earlier, it would have been cheaper. And apparently the FTC wants Microsoft to pay $20 million for mishandling children's personal information. The FTC claims that Microsoft has been obtaining and retaining information of children using its Xbox platform without consent. There is a change in policy once COPA came out, the Child Online Privacy Act, Protection Act, and I don't know how you can really comply with that without having a "Are you over 18" pop up every time you launch the Xbox, because I'm sure Xboxes send some form of telemetry as soon as you launch it, as soon as you turn it on. And maybe none of that's personal or identifiable information. I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft is totally in the clear, because in their legalese they say you must be 18 years or older to create an account. You must have your parents' permission. Maybe that's not good enough now. In particular, the COPA said that under a certain age you couldn't collect information at all, and there's probably just a ton of built-in systems. It says here, even when a user indicated they were under 13, they were also asked until late 2021 to provide additional personal information, including a phone number, and to agree to Microsoft's service agreement and advertisement policy, which until 2019 included a pre-checked box allowing Microsoft to send promotional messages and to share data with advertisers according to the complaint. This might also be a case where they are trying to retroactively punish them for things that were added by COPA after those dates. I'm not sure when COPA really kicked in. This also very possibly is just the FTC screwing with Microsoft because they don't want the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger. It is suspicious, to say the least. $20 million is probably just a drop in the bucket, even if Microsoft was really going to pay it just to make it go away. But it definitely is suspicious that this is showing up for Microsoft now. I would be interested, if I was a real journalist, to determine whether these same processes are any different with the PlayStation, or were any different with the PlayStation during those times. I've heard people really talk about this game Lisa, and I've never really put enough attention into it to want to play it, because it looks like an RPG Maker game that just doesn't look very well animated, but people seem to really like the story despite the graphics. And now we have an excuse in a Lisa Definitive Edition to not buy the original Lisa. Oh man, it's already in my account. I must have purchased it relatively recently. Well, now I have an excuse not to really play the original edition, and maybe I'll get a free upgrade to the Definitive Edition. Here you can see the Steam database plugin. This is the square that's added by SteamDB. This is also added by SteamDB. And it says the lowest recorded price was $2.49 at 75% off. And that was on the 15th of February in 2018. So SteamDB is still going to give you a better indicator of what the price has been in the past. The lowest 2-year low is $4.99. You can see it's $19.99 now. So even in complying with the EU's directive, you are better off to get better information. And if you click on this, by the way, you can see the prices of all regions at the same time, which they've made it, I think, a lot harder to jump via VPN to a different region and buy the games cheaper that way, although the EU wants to stop that too. And then if I was to click chart, then would there be a price chart under this? It doesn't seem like they have a price chart. So price history is just this. So no charting of the price history, which might be helpful information. No, here's the price history down here. I just had to scroll down. So $19.99, $9.99, $16.99. Seems like normally it is $9.99 and has been since July of 2021. And that's a 6-month zoom. If we were to go to the lifetime, can we not do that? Nope. 1 year zoom. This is 6 months. This is their entire lifetime of data. So this starts at 50% off, and then it goes to $10, then it spikes up. Now it's spiked up again. But yeah, this Lisa Definitive Edition launches July 18th. It will cost $24.99. And this is a bundle for Lisa the Painful and Lisa the Joyful, or just Lisa the Joyful and the Painful individually. So which one of these Lisa games do I have? I have Lisa the Painful. I didn't know that there was a sequel. Yeah, I didn't know there was a sequel at all. I'm not seeing a sequel listed. So is that an upcoming game? Or is it not made by this developer? Oh. So I stupidly didn't buy the DLC. That sucks. So this is described as the finale. So I'm just in a bad position in general to now potentially buy this game a second time when I haven't even played it the first time, and then I'm going to want to upgrade and probably not get a free upgrade for the main game, and then pay $10 for the DLC, which I guess, since I have nothing else I can do, I have to put this on the wish list. And that is definitely me getting bit in the butt by just buying a lot of games and not playing enough of them fast enough. I'm sure that's happened a couple of times, but that one does seem particularly unfortunate. Some Games Done Quick raised over $2.2 million for Doctors Without Borders. I think we had already talked about that. The Apple VR headset. I saw people talking about that and memeing about it for basically a day or two, and at this point I think people have just moved on. Once it gets into the hands of actual people, and if they actually did somehow support video games, then there might be the beginning of an argument of Apple revolutionizing VR, but they're not going to do it with this product. This was an early adopters product by far, which pretty much we've already had 5 to 10 years of early adopters VR headsets and still haven't made any progress outside of early adopters products. There was some very interesting claims as far as the chipsets that are built into this headset. They've created this new R1 VR chipset exclusive with an Apple, I think it's an M1 instead of an M2 CPU, and I think they said it had like 700 GPU cores in it, just a ridiculous number of cores, which I can only assume means that the cores are either being called cores when you really wouldn't call them cores, or they are really, really low processing speed cores, and there's just a massive amount of parallel processing going on. The problem, though, has not been that VR headsets up until this point didn't have good enough GPU or CPU power. The problem is the implementation and just the reality of this system. And even here, when you look at this Apple headset, it does not feel like an Apple product, and it doesn't feel like something that would be comfortable to wear for several hours or something you would want to wear. Now, I guess if we were in a fictional world where you had to protect your eyes at all costs because there's, I don't know, chlorine gas in the air, maybe a headset like this would make some sense. Yeah, if you were working in specific science labs, maybe it would make a lot of sense that this is the kind of headsets you there. And I could even imagine a face mask to filter out the air also being a thing, but in a casually comfortable bedroom or den or wherever you're going to use your VR, this just feels really constricting to have such a giant swim goggles on your face. There's also a fairly giant amount of stuff on the back of your head. Noticeably, this lady, if she didn't have her hair all the way up, and if she just had like dreadlocks or curls or anything on the side of her hair with even a significant amount of volume, I doubt she could get the headset around her hair. And that's not just going to be African hairstyles, that's going to be anybody with any kind of volume on the sides. You're going to squish your hair down, and you may not want to squish your hair down. But yeah, there's just no software there. And I don't know if Apple really makes that good of software to justify moving into VR or AR. And Apple makes decent software that's pretty dumbed down, whereas VR maybe should be more complicated and more revolutionary. And then there was this GameDeveloper.com article that's worth pointing out, since it's Pride Month, that the Fallout creator Tim Kaine, on his past and future as a gay game developer, Kaine looks back on his experience as a gay man in the video games and in video games has changed over the years. His experience as a gay man in video games has it changed over the years. Yeah, I'm sure when he made Fallout 1, he probably was not super out about it. And yeah, there is definitely something noticeable even in the first hour of playing Flight of the Amazon Queen, that you're comedically in this parody game, this joke game. You're comedically cross-dressing in drag, and you're inciting a little bit of gay panic, that you can flirt with other guys and act basically like a trap, intentionally hiding the fact that you're in drag to flirt with the guys. And that there is that, haha, isn't it so funny, he's in drag, that's so gay type comedy that really shouldn't fly these days. Being a cross-dresser, being in drag, being gay shouldn't be the punchline. For the Fallout games 1 and 2, which is pretty much all I imagine he worked on, I don't think there was really a lot of gay characters. So he may have added a thing here or there. And when you start to think of like Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, it's not a lot of gay characters in those cases either. It's really not a story that is conducive to much romantic interactions in the first place, because you're in this post-apocalyptic world where everybody's just fighting for their lives. You could have written the story that way, but they didn't. Let's see. But yeah, this might be an interesting story to read. They've got the trigger warning here. Recollections of homophobia and brief mention of transphobia. Overall, though, maybe his YouTube video would be better to watch than reading the article. He says everything's better, nothing's worse because of this, and I like that. That was his sign-off point. I would say nowadays, though, almost every game developer is extremely, extremely liberal and pro-LGBTQ+, and would not use gay as a punchline like you see in really, really old games. That being said, it's worth calling out China on this. You'll never see more homophobia than you will in China and Asian countries in general. Some Asian countries are totally cool with it, but there's, particularly in China, laws against depicting homosexuals. And so you'll never see something like Genshin Impact have a gay character that prominent. Because of that, I wouldn't be surprised if Genshin Impact being targeted outside of China gets away with more than you would think. And you could certainly blame Japan too, in that a lot of the times when you see homosexual relationships in Japanese games, the anime games, they are done from the perspective of only fan service and never from the perspective of true romance or anything other than, oh, isn't this so kinky, as a mentality. So we really haven't gotten to the point, particularly in Asian countries, where it's normalized as an experience. It's always expressed as being bizarre and weird. And that's not just Asia. Africa, too, it has big problems there. Russia, also, which claims to be part of Asia. Big problems with LGBTQ+. Middle East, totally big problems there. So while you can blame the United States and America in general for being the worst at a lot of things, I would say the United States and Americas, Canada, Mexico, are actually a lot better at acceptance than a big portion of the world. There are better countries, certainly, than the United States as far as acceptance by far, but we're definitely in the middle at best. And when you think about where games are made, since the vast majority of them are made in the West, we get a more progressive outlook than usual. But then it also comes off as a lot of SJW slacktivism, armchair quarterbacking of pride when you see low effort conversions of turning Aloy in Horizon Zero West to being gay in the DLC of the second game without properly writing the character that way, or turning Ellie in The Last of Us to gay, which I think also happened. Like, there have been some late game decisions to make characters gay after they've long since been established that just come off as very bad writing and tokenism and pandering, whereas there are other characters where it comes off much more naturally because it was the intention from the beginning, and you didn't have production companies and publishing companies saying, let's not overemphasize that, or let's make it so we could edit that out when we sell the version in China. Yeah. There has still not been really a great example of an iconic character who was just naturally gay, but that wasn't a major factor that they put into it. Like, and there definitely could have been cases where you could have written a story like that and not made a big deal of it. That TV show I was watching From actually has an interesting point where at the two of the people that are trapped in the city are kind of dating, but one of the persons was engaged, and so the lady says, I'm engaged, and she's been dating while trapped in the city a guy, and then she comes out and says, oh, but I'm engaged to my girlfriend. And she just mentions it, and it was just known to the people in the city, and it wasn't revealed to the viewer. What's this new Star Trek Online update? Summer Spotlight hub for the hottest video game announcements on Steam. So, assumedly, the lady is bisexual, or she's just desperate. So it seems like they added an extra spot for the Summer Spotlight. Special live streams each day from June 7th to the 13th. So, yeah. Seems to me like we either missed some, they definitely are going very colorful in the background here as far as announcements. There's no point here as far as things that have already happened, so maybe nothing has happened yet. Let's see. When I say see all upcoming events, it then takes me to a black background page, so there's some inconsistency there. Let's see, Guerrilla Collective Publisher Spotlight happened 8 hours ago, and Guerrilla Collective Showcase happened 10 hours ago. Okay. So, that's what I've missed so far. Which that's not that much. Tomorrow, IGN, Summer Game Fest, Devolver Digital and Media Indie Exchange. Then Saturday is oh, I don't get to tomorrow. So nothing's happening on Friday? Or are they saying tomorrow as in Friday? Yeah, today is Wednesday, but maybe they've rolled over on their clock to think tomorrow is Friday. Well, anyways, there's a lot of announcements, certainly. Let's go through the Video Games Chronicle news. See how much of this is new. June's PlayStation Plus Essential Games are now available to claim. NBA 2K23, Jurassic World Evolution 2, and Trek to Yomi. These are games that we already knew were coming. I guess they're just now available. Western Digital has launched its Xbox Series X and S storage expansion cards. And Western Digital obviously is very committed to this Western Digital Black physical branding, because they've got the slipcover with these ridges over it to make it look like a standard Western Digital Black external hard drive. That being said, they really can't change the form factor of the actual piece of metal you jam in the back of it, so it is just a slipcover, and they're probably being held to some standards here in that they have to have a tapered edge with Xbox on the back of it to yank the thing out. Technically, this might be a great standard. Unfortunately, it's so proprietary, nobody's ever going to use it for anything else. I'll be surprised if we even see it in the next Xbox as a standard. The whole Consumer Electronics Show just happened, so if that was going to be a trend where you could convince motherboard manufacturers to support this kind of interface, it probably would have happened. You would have seen that being announced at the CES, and it definitely was not being announced at the CES. If anything, the big trend at CES is people trying to move where the power plugs go so that they point downward on the motherboard, and then the cords all go behind the motherboard in extra back space behind the motherboard for better airflow. It's not a terrible thought. There probably is a better way, though, to redefine connectors and adjust the nonsense of the large amount of power cords you have to plug in the motherboards and fan connectors and things like that. But yeah, that's pretty much the only thing that was a big trend, other than this new technology as a cooler that we may very well see in devices like a Steam Deck 2, and make almost a perfect argument to not buy a Steam Deck 1 at this point and see if this new cooling technology can actually do what it says it's going to do, particularly if it can do it in a reasonable amount of power usage. Because if this new cooling technology cools things down, but you have to be plugged into the wall the whole time, that would be unacceptable. Payday 3's release date has seemingly leaked, targeting a September release date, they're saying. Who really cares? You really shouldn't. We need to see what Payday 3 is. We need to see if people actually want to play Payday 3, and you just need reviews, and an actual release date will come well before you see reviews. They have been all over the place, Starbreeze has, as to whether they want to be a developer or a publisher. They've tried to be a developer, then a publisher, then a developer again. They've tried to have Payday 1 recaptured in Payday 2, but at some point I think they put some weird microtransactions or something in Payday 2 and people just didn't like it as much, or they just changed the core gameplay too much. So for the most part, I imagine fans of Payday 1 want Payday 3 to be almost exactly the same as Payday 1, but better looking. And I'm not sure that Starbreeze is willing to just make a Payday 3 that is less monetizable and just a generic remaster of the first game. Moving on, Disney Dreamlight Valley Update 5 release date and patch notes have been revealed. The next major update will be titled The Remembering. It's coming out Wednesday, June 7th. Let's see. Addition of Cinderella's Fairy Godmother, and adding a number of other features. One notable addition is mannequins, which let players show off their outfits with having to wear them. Scrooge Shop will also now make it easier for players to see whether an item is on sale is already part of their player's collection. Okay. I'm still not sure the Disney Dreamlight works as a game, though. It seems like it should, but it may just have too much microtransactions in it. It definitely has the air that it has too much microtransactions in it, but honestly, I don't know if there's much of microtransactions in it at all. I don't know if you couldn't just start the game right now and grind for 6 months and have everything unlocked that you would want unlocked. I've almost gotten to that point with Marvel Snap where I've almost unlocked all the cards, and yeah, I don't know if there's going to be that big of a motivation to continue playing if I've unlocked all the cards. I guess I would just start trying to unlock variant images of cards at that point, or just collecting a massive amount of premium currency to buy new cards earlier, if you can even pull that off. I should probably go ahead and just get rid of this banner. Let's see if we can highlight everything here. That should do it. Yep. So we'll get rid of the banner notification. BioWare is reportedly being replaced as the developer of Star Wars The Old Republic. It's claimed EA is moving development to Broadsword Online games. This is Star Wars The Old Republic. Is this an old game or is this a new game? Yeah, I'm not even sure if Star Wars The Old Republic is that game they announced a long time ago and just showed that one trailer, or if that's something else. Yeah, I just don't know. Like, ideally, I'd want to grab this. There we go, yeah. Get rid of that yellow, too. No reason to have just a orangish yellow banner on the side. Moving on with the actual news. Street Fighter 6 is the second game in a month to earn the coveted Famitsu 40. Only 29 games have been given a perfect score in the Japanese magazine's 37-year history. So, yeah, I guess any slight concerns about Street Fighter 6 and their new art style and their new logo seem to have been alleviated in the fact that there is a good game behind all of that. So, no real reason to concern. I guess then the question becomes, do I really need to play Street Fighter 5 or 4 or even Street Fighter 3? I think at least one version of Street Fighter 2 should probably be played for historic reasons. And I think historically it's even interesting to look at Street Fighter 1. But if I were to get into fighting games, I could see myself just looking at Street Fighter 1, playing Street Fighter 2 a little bit, then jumping to Street Fighter 6. Undoubtedly, I'll probably suck at all of those games since I'm just not good at fighting. And maybe there is an easier fighting game to start within the Street Fighter series. But for veterans of the fighting game genre, obviously Street Fighter 6 is doing well. The latest PlayStation 5 system update is now available. Sony says the firmware update improves stability and messages on some screens. Which, okay. Whatever that really means. Half the time I think when they improve stability, they are literally just upgrading security keys and DRM and lying about it actually improving stability. Apparently Coca-Cola has released a limited edition League of Legends flavor that tastes like XP, quote unquote. Coke says players will enjoy the taste of experience points, another quote. So here you have probably paid League of Legends cosplayers all doing a sponsorship for Coca-Cola, which, since the focus here is on the Coca-Cola cans, they are pretty blurry in the first place. It seems to me like this cosplayer may be cosplaying the same character as this. And I know this is a cosplayer cosplaying Jinx, but I could not tell you for a second who this guy or this guy is cosplaying. Jinx is probably the only character I can even name of League of Legends. So I don't really suspect that having cosplayers do this photo shoot really benefited the cosplayers visually much as far as their showing off their cosplay, nor did it probably benefit Coca-Cola. The better way to do this would clearly have been, let's do a photo shoot for a couple hours with each cosplayer individually, let's get some group shots, let's have them focused, let's have those pictures touched up by a professional photographer, then let's have a macro photography image made around Coca-Cola and then superimpose the Coca-Cola image on top in like a corner or to the side so that you can get the best of both worlds. And in the cosplay individual shoots, maybe you have a Coca-Cola can around there, but you don't focus on it being shown specifically the way this is being shown, where the front of the label and the can has to be shown to the camera. They don't even do the best job doing this. I would blame the photographer on this. This is horribly framed. You've got this guy holding the can way lower than the other people. These two are touching each other. which, yeah, that wouldn't have worked with 5 cans anyways. Having 5 of the same thing really doesn't make a lot of sense either. But yeah, you would have definitely wanted this all level, probably much lower. Like, we don't have to show the belly of the Jinx cosplayers, so just put this all down lower and have them frame out the picture properly. Like, this feels like this was shot in like 5 minutes. Whereas here is more of a macro photography image that you would expect to see around the Coca-Cola. And I imagine the Coca-Cola here is literally just Coca-Cola that they got the chemical balance wrong on, and so it tastes slightly off. That is some of the limited edition cans I have seen of drinks, is that they will take a off batch of something. This one says 0 sugar, so this would be like Coca-Cola Zero, probably, with the chemicals and the taste off, so they'll sell it as a limited edition can. Noticeably, Coca-Cola does not sell the cans alone, so if you were to try to collect these Cokes, you've got to pop the top or otherwise drain it. Otherwise, eventually, the caustic, acidic Coca-Cola in the inside of a can will eat out the plastic lining that is sprayed on the inside of the aluminum and then eat and rust through the aluminum. You can't have a collection like this last more than 50 years if the liquid is actually inside of it. You could probably have it last in a glass bottle for a long time, but a glass bottle with a cap probably is not airtight as you think and would eventually evaporate it, leaving a crystallized Coca-Cola crystalline at the bottom. So if you really wanted these cans as a collectible, Coke should make empty versions of the cans to sell for collections, and they just don't do that. I don't know why you would want to collect cans in the first place, though. They're not particularly interesting or not really well designed to show off. If you cut the can and laid it flat, then you could see the full art on it. And yeah, you could then have a collection book that way. But yeah. Moving on, I'm talking way too much about a Coca-Cola ad, basically. The first Diablo 4 character to reach hardcore level 100 has died after a disconnect. The 84-hour playthrough has ended through no apparent fault of the player. I guess maybe this was the custom character he was playing as. Now, he was supposed to get his name embodied on a statue for doing this, so we'll have to see if that happens. But otherwise, yeah, he was recognized by Blizzard, so he will get his name on the statue forever, which I don't know what that really matters, because the game will eventually be shut down anyways. And he's spent 84 hours in a very short period of time to play through the game, so I wouldn't be surprised if he just doesn't want to play it anymore at all after putting 84 hours or 82 hours into it. It's definitely not the way to enjoy yourself playing a game like that. Switch ended the PlayStation 5's 4-month run as the UK's best-selling console in May, which, okay. In comparison, the Switch has held strong victories in pretty much every month this year, except for maybe one in Japan. And sadly, we don't really get sales numbers from the US. Yeah, I don't have a source like GameDeveloper.com doesn't put out sales numbers for the US in particular. So that is something, if I was going to look for a new news source, which I probably won't do, getting US or American specific sales numbers might be somewhat helpful. I imagine the PlayStation 5 is selling pretty well in the United States and Americas also, but I wouldn't be surprised if Xbox is doing a little bit better in the United States than it does in the UK, and it obviously doesn't sell at all in Japan. Let's see, Madden NFL 24 is revealed ahead of the August release. I don't know why you really would need to reveal a Madden 24. It could be easily assumed that there will be a Madden 24 unless they drop the Madden name, which I don't think they plan on doing. Let's see, Hideo Kojima has announced a documentary called Connected Worlds. It promises an insight into the designer's creative process. I don't know how this isn't much different than his podcast, which, remember, he was doing this whole podcast that was both being released in English and Japanese, with them subbing or dubbing over him speaking in Japanese into English. Yeah, they were dubbing it, not subbing it. This really just feels like yet another example of Hideo Kojima wanting to be a celebrity. I guess if you zoomed in here, you might see what's on his phone, although I assume it's just the camera app. But yeah, clearly he wants to be the celebrity, he wants to be the center of attention, and he is increasingly selling himself as an auteur, genius, creative designer, when I suspect he isn't that big of a creative genius designer. And it doesn't even matter if he is, if he's just spending more time being part of documentaries than making games. That's a problem. Meanwhile, I have no hope at all that he's going to make anything that I would want to play that's going to be specifically different from Death Stranding. Like, I don't know if he even has a new idea for a new game. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get just the Death Stranding 2 out of him for the next 4 years. And then maybe in 6 years he might announce a new concept or idea. But that's a really long time to wait. And particularly, you would have to be enthralled with Metal Gear Solid as a series and assume he was the only creative force in Metal Gear Solid to really want to wait that long. I imagine Hideo Kojima will constantly try to get in the news, but will increasingly have less reason for mainstream journalists to report on him, because he won't have done anything for the gaming community in a long time. Let's see. Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 Season 4 has been revealed. Check that out on videogameschronicles.com, videogameschronicle.com, if you want to read that article. Paradox is refunding Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 pre-orders. As development continues, we will be updating the game's additions and bonus content. They are offering refunds. I don't know if they are automatically. They are automatically refunding all physical pre-orders because it's updated various editions of the game with digital pre-orders will also be granted by request. This might be a case that they're trying to do a bait and switch and they want to charge more for the pre-orders. This might be a case that they're legally required to refund them because they're not delivering at the date they promised. Or this might be a case that they're just changing things, and this definitely feels like the kinds of things you don't want to change. You're going to lose a lot of people who pre-ordered this game. They're not going to come back and pre-order the game a second time. Meanwhile, I just can't keep Vampire the Masquerade straight in my head, so I am confusing Bloodlines 2, which isn't out yet, with the poorly selling Swan Song, Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song game that did come out to no real good reception. Video Games Chronicle has 18 minutes of Final Fantasy XVI's gameplay if you want to check that out. Then why are we back to the news here? This is older stuff. What happened there that it would have gone back to the news page? I guess it may have gone to page 2 and then opened the older stuff. That might be what happened. Death Stranding and future Kojima production games are coming to Apple platforms. The studio's debut title is going to hit Mac. Yeah, Kojima was part of the WDC presentation. Games coming to Mac now, even big games like Death Stranding, probably not going to make a big difference though. Like, it's going to always be too little too late at this level. Darn it, I'm dropping my mouse. Yeah, I definitely think you would have to have Apple majorly push into gaming and just have a lot of compatibility to play a lot of old games. If they try to support and adapt, say, Proton and SteamOS type supports, which would be Proton, then you might get a lot of back compatibility. But the newest Mac stuff with that new GPU I was talking about also does not it doesn't support the external GPUs at all. So if you get this new graphics card with a built-in chipset from Apple, that's the only graphics card you're ever going to be able to get. You're not going to be able to upgrade. It's going to be very much like a console experience, except for it's going to be Apple making its own walled garden console experience, which is going to probably not focus on games enough to matter. So, yeah. You'd basically have to convince me that there was a new person in charge of Apple altogether, or that there was just a major change of heart and focus at Apple to make me think that they would start caring about games. They've never cared about games in their experience up until this point. It would have made a lot of sense with the iPhone being a big thing to at some point have come out with a portable Game Boy competitor, and they've never done that. It would have made a lot of sense with the Apple TV to put more emphasis on games on Apple TV as a product, and they haven't really done much of that. Moving on, a new Capcom Showcase will take place next week. 4 more retro games have been added to the Nintendo Switch Online, including Harvest Moon. So Harvest Moon for the Nintendo 64, Mystery Tower, Kirby, Tilt and Tumble, and I can't read that one. Let's see. Blaster Master, Enemy Below. 2 Game Boy Colors, 1 Super NES, and Mystery Tower looks like it's a NES or Famicom game. It looks more like a Famicom game, if anything. Don't care about their podcast. We already talked about the FTC fine. Apparently, Microsoft has already agreed on this settlement, but maybe they didn't agree on the amount. Yep. This literally may just be a $20 million bribe to the FTC and the US government to allow them to do a merger, which arguably maybe they shouldn't allow the Activision Blizzard merger, but I mean, every capitalist country in the world, it seems to me like it's run by rich corporations and oligarchs who run and basically own rich corporations. So why exclusively try to prevent one merger when you're not going to adopt a general policy of preventing mergers overall? Now, if countries around the world all of a sudden said, hey, wait, these corporations are getting too powerful and they have too much influence over politicians, and the politicians now are not even able to make laws and enforce laws because the corporations can just bribe other politicians or cause politicians to be replaced by other politicians through super PACs. If they made that realization, if politicians realize that they've become powerless in the face of big business, then and they decide to do something about it, which would be to break up big businesses, I'd be all for that. I love the idea of having 100% sales tax or income tax on all your profits over $1 billion or $1 trillion. Pick a number. I love the idea of saying you can only have one office in one country, and you can't be these international businesses that have multiple offices in different companies. Or I even love the idea of saying you can only have 100,000 employees, and then your company needs to be broken up because you just have too many employees. That probably wouldn't change the situation much to limit the number of employees as much as it would change the situation to stop companies from having massive amounts of money on hand to acquire other companies. That's where an income tax would be much more beneficial. And even if they wanted more of a scalpel approach and just said, we're going to stop all mergers of companies that are too big or that have more than 10% of the market share, that's something that they could do. Where effectively, at the moment, it seems like the United States government is perfectly willing to allow AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile to exist, with each of those triopolies owning about a third of the business and the market share. But yeah, if we were going to start breaking up big companies, there's a lot of big companies that could be broken up. There's definitely sectors that could be targeted for being broken up, such as the drug industry of making prescription drugs and hospital ownership or retail, real estate ownership, not retail ownership. Walmart definitely should be on the chopping block too. Amazon.com totally on the chopping block for being broken up. If you want to start naming big companies that have a lot of different influence on day-to-day life, I don't know if Microsoft and Activision Blizzard even register to a significant portion of the people in the United States. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling here. The Starfield Xbox controller and headset will release during the Xbox Game Showcase. Some players are reporting they've already seen it in stores. So my guess is it's just going to say these things are available for purchase now, which doesn't inherently mean Starfield is going to be released during the Xbox Game Showcase, but it might be. It's definitely a thought. And then my internet and power flickered, and I bet that's what all of these tabs are. Let's see if I can hit the enter button to see what happens there. That didn't do anything. That was an article we'd already covered. That was an article we'd already covered. That's that same article. So duplicate tabs. Alright, so we probably didn't miss anything as the macro was running. Well, the power flickered. It only flickered for a second, but that would have been enough to reset my router. Halo Infinite Season 4 held a new character progression system called Career Rank. This latest season is set to begin this month. This is pretty terrible animation for a Halo game. And they're taking their helmets off, which maybe you shouldn't do in a Halo game. This is definitely not going to satisfy anybody who's upset with the focus of the single player system just being abandoned for a Halo. Yeah, I don't know if there's a large community of satisfied Halo 4 players out there at all. There's probably a few people still playing it, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Halo fandom, for whatever's left of them, has gone back to playing Halo 1 or Halo 2, or they've moved ahead and are just playing Destiny 2. We already talked about the Mario movie. Let's see. Diablo 4 is Blizzard's fastest selling game ever. It was reportedly played for 93 million hours during its 4-day early access period. I guess the question is, do you have to pay a base price to play Diablo 4? I think you do. I don't think you can just start free to play on it. But also, Blizzard hasn't released anything in a while, so it's not surprising that Diablo 4 would be the fastest selling game ever. There's more players now than there were before. Diablo 3 definitely didn't catch people's attention as much, so people are still itching for a new, better Diablo. And Diablo Immortal and the spin-off mobile games are not satisfying people. Now, the only other thing that really from Blizzard would have competed would have been Overwatch 2, and I just don't think there's as big of a hype around that. So yeah, they did a pretty good job hyping up Diablo 4, and now it's just going to be a matter of, can they make Diablo 4 a game that people stick with, and can they make an experience particularly that would interest me in playing a single player experience that is fairly consistent, because I really don't want to play a Diablo 4 game that will be irrelevant as an experience 2 years down the line because they'll have changed everything or everything will have reset. I'd like to be able to play Diablo 4 and level up a character and then come back a couple years later and play the game a second time and level up that character some more. Not that it sounds like that even matters, since they have a scaling system that just balances everything out anyways. Alright, let's move on to the Gematsu articles. Gematsu has an Enshrouded Combat trailer, combat gameplay trailer if you want to check that out. Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition launches July 31st, which I feel like I've already looked at this game. Maybe I saw the announcement. I got another comment on the YouTube Shorts asking me if I'd made the game that I was making a YouTube Short around, and at one level I probably should update the description. On the other level, it's getting interactions and comments, so why change it? Capcom Showcase is set for June 12th. We talked about the games coming to the eShop. Talked about the Siberia animated series. We talked about Resident Evil 4 remake. Let's see, Pikmin 4 Rise to the Occasion prologue trailer. You know, if I am going to play Pikmin 4, I probably should play Pikmin 3 first. And I don't know if I'd ever get around to that. Let's see, Grezzo announces Dragon Racing game Jet Dragon for Apple Arcade. Interesting. Being an Apple Arcade game, it's going to have considerably less competition. It looks alright for what it is. It doesn't look amazingly interesting. I don't know what you could really add to a dragon racing game. Overall, it is just going to be a racing game where you happen to be riding a dragon, compared to like Mario Kart, which is a racing game where you can be riding multiple different types of vehicles. Here we have the same article, Diablo 4 becoming Blizzard's entertainment's fastest selling game of all time. Crime Boss Rockay City for PS5 and Xbox Series launches June 15th. Updated roadmap announced. I don't think this game was particularly well received. Let's see, it's an Epic Games Store exclusive at the moment. Yeah. Hopefully they can maybe add some updates and put some polish on it so that it actually would make some sense as a game. But I wouldn't be surprised if they just wasted a lot of money for people's likenesses and just don't have the budget to improve the game. Dr. Fetus's Mean Meat Machine launches June 22nd. This is a Super Meat Boy spin-off game, obviously. We'll make a YouTube short around that. I did update my plugin to change the text, so we should see some of that in the headlines as we go down the Gematsu articles today. We already talked about the Lisa Definitive Edition. Remnant 2, The World of Remnant, Ward 13, and the Labyrinth trailer. Let's see. This is a Gearbox Publishing from Gunfire Games game. So I guess Gearbox Publishing is still doing something. Yep, this game is adding new trailers, which if there was a second video here I would make a YouTube short on, but there isn't a second video there, and I'm gonna have to start paying attention to that fact. Like, I'm only gonna make a secondary YouTube short for something that is still just putting out teasers and trailers if those teasers and trailers actually show up on the YouTube page, so I'm actually making a different short showing different video. That makes a lot of sense. Mega Man X Dive is going to end service on September 27th. Update: this was a free-to-play Mega Man game shutting down after 3 years. I think this was mostly a Japanese game. And yeah, it says update: the iOS and Android versions in North America, Europe, and Latin America and Korea will remain online indefinitely. However, the shutdown will affect the iOS and Android versions operated by Capcom Taiwan, as well as the PC version worldwide. So you can see overall this was a fairly mixed experience. So nobody really liked it in the first place. Yeah. I don't see anything really wrong with the game. It looks fine. As a free-to-play online PvP game. Apparently they censored Roll's swimsuit. Roll being, I guess, one of the lady Mega Man characters of this Mega Man family. I don't think she's in any of these screenshots. But yeah, overall it doesn't look like the game was particularly well received, and hopefully this is a case where Capcom is learning to make better products and not just try and milk fandom. I don't know if any of these characters are Roll. I guess I could guess maybe this is Roll, but I bet it isn't, or this is Roll. Could be this girl, could be this girl. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be a male Mega Man in a swimsuit. Mega Man in general, when you look at the art, is definitely evoking a visual there that is pretty old school as far as anime and animation, in that you have just generic underlining leotard and then big shoulder pads and big almost underwear like looking pants there. The armor is definitely not very detailed or anything like that. Let's see, can we, so we're trying to forever improve things. Click on that. No. Yeah. I think there's probably, I'd have to just get like pixel perfect click here. But also it seems to me like the image is on top of a secondary image. So it's like in a frame. Yeah. And as such, I don't think there's a way to get rid of the container. Yeah. Because it's in a frame like that. So I can't get rid of the red line as easily as I could get rid of the yellow line on the side, and that just comes down to the weird way web pages are made. But I shouldn't be messing with any of that. We're already going way too long. Street Fighter 6 sales top 1 million. Famitsu review scores for issue 1801 are out, giving Lego 2K Drive an average 32 out of 40, Railway Empire 2 30 out of 40, and Street Fighter 6 a perfect 40 out of 40, which we had that spoiled for us, so we already knew. If you get a perfect score from Famitsu with this new graphics, I suspect this is the way forward for Street Fighter overall. Narrative-wise and visually, interface-wise, everything is going to be iterations on Street Fighter 6 going forward. So if you don't like the way it feels, the way it plays, the way it looks, you probably have very little hope that they're going to change it. Octopath Traveler 2 shipments and digital sales top 1 million, and they have this rough pencil sketch concept art, which you probably would have to know Octopath Traveler better to figure out who these characters are. You've got this fox-tailed girl hanging on to this long-haired guy, it looks like, and then you have this hourglass-shaped skinny corset lady with the back cut out. I guess here's the full image. Here's a thank you image. In all fairness, this is the level of effort I'd like to see as far as a thank you piece of art. If you're even going to do a thank you piece of art, I don't want to see something that seems like the artist spent an entire week animating when it's not going to be added to the game or seen in any other way. And it's not worthwhile to it really is just not worthwhile to make a YouTube short just because the game sold 1 million. But I will put this on the fall list. I need to reconsider whether I want to play Octopath Traveler, because it might make a lot more sense to play Octopath Traveler than it does to potentially play a Final Fantasy game, since they're basically the same creator. Here's that fox girl, and here's that lady. The guy, though, I guess this guy? Yeah. Let's see. Enclave HD launches June 29th for the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, and then soon after the PS5. This is an example of where my substitution plugin cannot substitute anything because it didn't say PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 at the same time, so I couldn't have said PS4/5. And you can't combine Xbox One and Switch and PS4 unless I wanted to combine all of these as old generation consoles, last gen consoles, PS4 and Xbox One. But then where do you put the Switch in that statement? Because the Switch is technically not a last gen console, in Nintendo's eyes at least. I think in a lot of people's eyes it would be. Eastern Exorcist for the PS4 and Switch launches June 8th. It is already on Steam. Looks like a kind of interesting side-scrolling beat-em-up game. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the wish list. This is being published by Bilibili, and Bilibili is, I think, a YouTube competitor in part, and obviously they're doing other things too. And I've heard more about them recently. In particular, that Linus Tech Tips has their channel on Bilibili. Let's see. Bokeh Game Studio Golden Hour video starring Fumihiko Yasuda and Makoto Shibata. Team Ninja pair discusses their distinctive approaches to creating games. And this would be about as much as you'd want to see instead of a whole documentary. It's just a couple people drinking what looks like, I'd say, mimosas, but I could be wrong. Might just be drinking some kind of juice, but I bet there's alcohol in there. And then discussing something. Let's see, Golden Hour. Is it actually an hour? No. It's 25 minutes and 47 seconds. People talking, which is a fine amount of time for a video, but maybe you don't say Golden Hour as the title, particularly if you're not going to try to have a series of these, and in particular if you're not going to actually target an hour worth of conversation. I'd assume it's heavily edited at 25 minutes. Now, if you were to watch this, the question would come down to, like, subtitles. It's just, yeah. Almost certainly he's speaking Japanese, and you would have to read the subtitles the whole time. Which, yeah, some people can't tolerate that. Also, usually when I see conversations like this, it is often very generic artistic opinions that are being discussed. It's not like proven scientific methods of developing or programming games. These are creative types talking about their opinions as a creative creation, and that's only going to get you so far. If you want to make a game inspired by Neo, Wulong Fallen Dynasty, or Rise of Ronin, you would listen to Yasuda. If you wanted to make a game inspired by Fatal Frame, you'd listen to Shibata. If you want to make a game that's completely different, you probably won't get much help listening to either one of them. Excuse me. Take a moment to drink some water. And since they are And this might be something that, in particular, the Japanese would not learn. But since they are creatives talking about creative opinions, it is just as useful to have a very negative reaction to something they say and say, no, I don't agree with that at all. If I made a game, I'd do it completely differently, as it is to have a positive agreeing um, a reaction to what they're saying. Whereas the Japanese are trained from birth basically to always agree, at least externally, with people and say, yes, yes, I agree, and fall in line. And so something like this, watched by a Japanese creative, may have them fall in line and just copy what is being said as gospel, when a Westerner might be more willing to think of themselves as a peer, if not an equal, to these creators, and take in their input, but make different decisions based on their input, or reject some of their input altogether. I think in part, when you look at Studio Ghibli, and this is going to be a bit of a rant, part of the problem with Studio Ghibli is that it is built with a bunch of people that fall in line with Ghibli's vision as far as making movies. And so the multiple times that Ghibli has been attempted to retire and not been involved in a Ghibli movie, it doesn't come out as being something different or unique, or even as good as a Ghibli movie, because he surrounded himself basically with a bunch of yes men, instead of hiring somebody who would have had a distinct, different visual interpretation or idea or narrative to tell. And so everything is just reliant on the one creative decisions of Ghibli as he gets older and older. And you see that with Disney too. Like, all the decisions around Disney movies these days definitely feel like they are being made by committee at the higher levels of Disney. You don't have somebody with an idea that wants to tell a story that where Pixar or Disney would just let them tell that story. Instead, you have a committee decision to remake old movies in live action, and maybe there's a slight change here and there, but for the most part, there are definitely some key points that you have to you have to just remake exactly the same way the original animated movies were. Noticeably, the Lion King reboot, the Little Mermaid reboot, the Beauty and the Beast remake, all those in live action did not change the narrative story at all. There's no big twist, there's no slight change, there's nothing worth mentioning that happens narratively. In the Little Mermaid remake, you have the mermaid played by a black actress, which is a very superficial change. But the story otherwise plays out exactly the same, it sounds like. Moving on. A roguelike action game, Petite Petite Petite. Early access is now available. It adds new modes, characters, enemies, items, and more. Yeah. I definitely feel like at some point there was some ambition to create stuff in Disney movies. But honestly, even in the beginning, most Disney movies were very lackluster in ambition, because they were just ripping off stories that had already been written. And Pixar movies, at least, were trying to do something new. Like Cars is an original concept. Up is an original concept. Alice in Wonderland, Sleeping Beauty, those are not original concepts at all. Surprised there isn't a Wizard of Oz animated movie from Disney. Let's see. F1 Manager 2023 launches July 31st. Gangs of Sherwood launches October 19th. Probably should have thought of making a YouTube short on that racing game, but whatever. I already closed the tab, so I'll skip it. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak expansion, the update 6 launches June 8th for the Switch and PC. Title update 4, 5, and 6 launch August 24 for the PS4/5. Here's a point where we've rewritten this, and the Xbox One/Series. So by default, the headline would have read differently, but I have changed it to make it less wordy, which I need to do that with my chat decorum rules too. Like, there's obviously a better way to put all the do's up front and all the don'ts at the end. I have definitely noticed that for the past week or so that we have had the new chat decorum, less people have been willing to comment on the chat, so I've obviously shot myself in the foot by doing the new rules, although it may be just a coincidence too. A game called My Time at Sandrock launches September 26th for the PS5, Xbox Series, Xbox One, and Switch. So here is an example where I didn't make a substitution when I should have, where this could have said Xbox One/Series, so that we save ourselves a little bit of talking. But there is no PS4 version in this case, and that's why it's different. Normally it would have been PS4, 5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One. Later it is coming out for the PS4. Don't think I've seen this game before. I wonder if My Time at Sandrock is in any way connected to a different game. Yeah, My Time at Porsche. Yeah, it seems like it might be. Yeah, My Time at Porsche here. I think a farming sim that I inevitably determined I just didn't really want to play. But maybe I'll put it back on the fault list and think again about it, since now it's getting a sequel, which seems like it's just the same game but in Australia, or fictionalized Australia, which may be good enough to justify a sequel. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge DLC Dimension Shell Shock has been announced, so that's interesting. So in this case, this would be DLC. So I will make a YouTube short around the DLC specifically. Pixel art RPG Terra Memoria has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. A little RPG with exploration, fighting, construction, and puzzles. Let's see what it looks like on Steam. Okay. Looks interesting enough. Forgotten Ann Studio announces a side-scrolling action-adventure game called Forgotten Lings for consoles and PC, due out in 2024. Let's see. Was I making YouTube shorts around games that don't have release dates? I don't think I was, but I think I am going to put things on the fall list. But I do think I want to see something more than just 2024 if I'm going to make a YouTube short there's no point in making a YouTube short around a game that won't be available. I did have somebody on the YouTube short also comment what the price is, so maybe I should address that. Like, all I can really tell people is to go and search the price yourself, whether on Steam or somewhere else. Probably on Steam, because I can just never consistently say, well, the price is this, because the price will change. Same thing, I guess. 2023, this game Europa doesn't have a real release date. Probably shouldn't get a short. Which, if I hold fast to that idea, then I will make considerably less shorts, because trailers will come out for games that don't have a release date, and then I wouldn't make a YouTube short around the trailer. But that does then create conflicting logic as far as whether I should make a YouTube short around something that has one trailer out, even if it doesn't have a release date. Let's see, 30XX launches Q3 of 2023 for the Switch and PC. And how does early access complicate something like this? I think it definitely complicates the situation, but if you can actually purchase the game and play the game, even if it's in early access, you have to treat that as a game that has been released. So that would deserve a short. A wordy adventure game called Leximan has been announced for PC, due out in 2024. It's funny we're getting all these announcements before a basic week of announcements. So it's going to be busy, I think. World of Horror has been delayed to October 19th. I thought this game was already out. It's in early access and it's already on my wish list, which I don't know why it's specifically on my wish list. I guess I made an exception, and I doubt this game really would be so bad that it would lose all of its very positive reviews. But yeah, it is also weird to have something in early access on the wish list. So let's just do the right thing and put that back on the follow list where it probably belongs. And we'll make a YouTube short since it is coming out at some point. A final version of it. Years later, potentially. Since it's been in early access since 2020. A retro dungeon maker called Questmaster has been announced for Switch and PC. Oh, I did find, as I'm doing a little bit of research here, trying to figure out if there is a more kid-friendly Dungeons and Dragons type tabletop game in the real world on video game form. I did find a game called Root that looked like it might be a little bit more kid-friendly, but also it feels like it's a little bit complicated and perhaps locks you into just playing the Root rule set, which would have considerably fewer campaigns around it. Whereas I think ideally you would want just a Pathfinder collection of scenarios and stories that were kid friendly. Pathfinder to get away from Dungeons and Dragons, and kid friendly to introduce new kids to playing a Dungeons and Dragons like tabletop game. but I still really wouldn't know how many rule books and player's guides and dungeon master guides you really would need to buy to play Pathfinder. A game called Dark Deity 2 has been announced for PC. This is a sequel to a strategy RPG in 2021 that was released in 2021. It doesn't really interest me, so I don't want to put it on the fall list, and it doesn't have a release date, so I don't want to make a YouTube short out of it yet. Turn-based RPG Grifford Academy has been announced for PC, iOS, and Android, which you have an interesting set of pictures here, but it's not giving me much. Yeah. It seems almost like it's 3 school kids got sent to a fantasy world. Now they're fighting monsters in a fantasy world. So a standard isekai type game. It says wishlist on Steam, but noticeably I don't see a Steam link. If I click that, that'll just take me to PC. So let's see if we can just search it and find the Steam link that way. So yeah, there is a Steam link. The animation's a little soft, it looks like, when you look at this, but that may just be shading and styles. I'll give it a chance and put it on the fall list, but again, no release date, so should I make a YouTube short on it? No. Crashlands 2 has been announced for PC, iOS, and Android. This one does have a Steam link. Open world survivor RPG. Looks kind of like a 3D Terraria, which normally you would just call that Minecraft, but it does seem like it's potentially on a different style and attempt. I also have this Guerrilla Collective banner, which leads to a bunch of coming soon announcement games. I think we've already looked at all of that. Kingdom 80s Summer of Greed for PC launches June 26. Console version due out later. Finally, we have a game that has an actual release date. It is tagged with base building and simulations, and all I'm seeing is a bunch of kids on bikes. Kingdom 80s is a standalone expansion of the Kingdom series, the series epic adventure of microstrategy and base building. Defend your town against the mysterious greed and discover the secrets of your family lineage. I don't even see how you build a base on bikes, but whatever. This is really the kind of game that I would need to see a trailer for to try to get a general idea of how it even plays. I feel like the Kingdom series is a completely different visual outside of this game. So it does seem like this is almost like a parody spin-off of the Kingdom series, which is set in more of a fantasy time, and you're just going back and forth upgrading the city that you're in the background, and then the city is getting attacked by generic monsters, which doesn't really make the most sense. It definitely has that Stranger Things E.T. vibe of we love the 80s, which I guess that's probably a Stranger Things vibe more than anything. It doesn't even really make sense that it's called Kingdom. Moving on, Final Fantasy IX Memoria Project has a 25-minute gameplay demo, a fan-made proof of concept built in the Unreal Engine 5. So, let's see. It's a non-playable fan-made passion project built in Unreal Engine 5 that aims to capture the world of Final Fantasy IX in modern graphics. They released a 25-minute gameplay demo showcasing the action. It might be interesting to watch if you're interested in Final Fantasy IX, but in reality, it's probably just going to get DMCA'd at some point by Square Enix, and I seriously doubt Square Enix would actually take any influence from this if they were going to remake Final Fantasy IX, which apparently is currently in development, but that doesn't mean the project will ever actually be finished either. I don't even think of Final Fantasy IX as one of the Final Fantasy games that must be played, so it doesn't really interest me much. By Sweet Carol reveal trailer and screenshots. This is a thrilling horror game due out in 2024. That being said, I don't think they're saying what consoles it's coming for or anything like that. This definitely feels like a Disney animated game. I think I've seen this before, a Disney animated movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is really just a cutscene. If it isn't a cutscene, then you're going to effectively just probably be playing something that is more of a interactive game, like Space Ace, where you're just pressing a button for QuickTime events to move the animated stuff forward. But I would heavily suspect that it is actually closer to a point-and-click adventure game that's animated very nicely. And that was just the beginning cutscene. This is the kind of game that concerns me in the fact that it may be overselling itself. And if it is just a point-and-click adventure game, a lot of people would not be happy with that style of gameplay. And I don't know how horrific this kind of animation really could be. But I do have to admit I'm intrigued by the visuals. An atmospheric adventure platformer, A Void of Hope, has been announced for Switch and PC, demo out June 19th. One of the things there too is they described that game, the previous game, as a thrilling horror game, which you don't see people even trying to use new verbs when describing video games very often. When you're self-describing your video game, they'll just say it's a horror game. But to even use an extra verb and say thrilling does evoke an attempt to stand out. This game of Void Hope does not interest me from the looks of it, though. Those screenshots are pretty generic. A collectathon side-scrolling platformer called Promenade has been announced for consoles and PC. And what does consoles mean? That's a substitution, which means Xbox One, Xbox Series, PS4, PS5. and Switch, is what that should mean. But I may have messed up, so I need to check that. Let's see. Promenade. May not really be my type of game, but I would definitely give it a chance. Should I make a YouTube short around something that doesn't have a release date? No. I think if I put it on the follow list, then I know I haven't interacted with it before, so it probably does deserve a short if it generically is saying 2023, even though we don't have a date around that. I'm gonna lean that way, at least for this instance. Yeah. Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, collectathon type experience. Yeah. PS5, PS4, Xbox, Xbox Series, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PC. So consoles, some of these are redundant, but consoles are Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series, PS4, and PS5. That's what that means when I substitute it there. And so I did substitute it correctly. There is an awkward comma there, but whatever. Crypt Custodian has been announced for PC, a Metroidvania about cleaning up after the afterlife, which is an interesting concept, but I'm not sure if that makes much of a different type of gameplay experience. Overall, it still looks like a kind of above world Metroidvania type game. Good enough, though, to make it to the follow list, and I guess that is going to get a YouTube short. And Dawn of Monsters Arcade plus Character DLC pack has been announced. Let's see. So that is DLC here as far as arcade and DLC character pack. This is a bunch of monsters fighting each other in a fighting game. Let's go back to the original game and see that it's not on my follow list. And I think there is a justification for it to be on the follow list, or the wish list in this case. So I'm going to wish list that and the DLC, and then make a YouTube short around the DLC. And this should be our last Gamatsu article, but we are really late. Nimbus Infinity for PC launches June 22nd. I should have known that this was going to be a long stream, because I was not feeling well and I streamed very early last time on Monday. I should have known that. I should have made proper accommodations to move faster and not get so sidetracked. Yeah, this game is already mixed reviewed. I don't see anything here that would make me have any real faith in it. The screenshots look pretty boring for a mech suit fighter game, and the only single thing in this that even catches my eye a little bit is the anime girl in the mech suit, or in the latex bodysuit, or cat suit, whatever it's called. But yeah, that is uninteresting otherwise. So that takes us to our GameDeveloper.com articles, which we probably don't have a ton of articles here, so we can get through that pretty fast. We already talked about the Worms and Overcooked publisher having a new CEO. Marvel Snap and Resident Evil Village were among the Apple Design Award winners, which the other Apple Design Awards I think were given to non-video games. And honestly, I just think Resident Evil Village, I don't even know why it would be considered an Apple design candidate. Is it on Apple TV in some way? I guess it must be. Let's see if we go to the full website and see if we can get the full winner list. Here you have a website builder, you have a game called Stitch that they're not mentioning, you have Duolingo, which is not a game. Afterplace is a game they're not mentioning. Flighty is not a game. Railbound is a game. Headspace is not a game. Endling is a game. Any Distance is a game. So apparently Resident Evil Village is available either on iPad or iOS in general. Nope, it's available on Mac. So it's a Mac game. Whereas then Marvel Snap is available on iPad and iPhone. Yeah. There's actually a lot more games that won than compared to other apps that GameDeveloper.com could have had done a better job of mentioning, or just having a list of all the winners, which wouldn't have been that hard to write up either. Yeah, I still don't find Marvel Snap particularly interesting as a game, and I don't think the design of their levels or their interface is particularly that interesting. The only thing that's unique about Marvel Snap is its gameplay mechanic, and I don't particularly like the gameplay mechanic, so otherwise it looks pretty much like every other iPhone Android game. We already talked about Diablo 4 being apparently Blizzard's fastest selling game ever. Notice the yellow journalism here. We've had this same story taken as gospel, like most mainstream video game journalists take everything they hear as gospel. But because GameDeveloper.com doesn't like Activision Blizzard and doesn't want the merger to go through, they have thrown in this apparently in parentheses to their headline, which is unnecessary and unprofessional, because it is just the standard way in which video game journalists work, in that they take every headline as gospel and they just say everything as fact. Like, you could put apparently in any headline ever around the world and it doesn't mean anything. It's a pointless word when you're reporting on something as news. Either it's you fact checked it or you didn't. If you didn't fact check it, then you're a bad journalist. If you did, you don't need the apparently. So this is an admittance in the headline that they're a bad journalist and they didn't fact check it. If there was some possibility that this wasn't true, you would just put a disclaimer at the bottom saying video game or GameDeveloper.com was not able to independently verify the some facts in this story, or whether this was true or not. But you don't really have to do that, because you can just report on other people reporting, and that's good enough. If you say somebody else said it was the fastest selling game ever, then you've done your due diligence at that point, as long as you have a source that you can say, our source told us that. We already talked about the Steam now showing EU players the lowest game prices for the last 30 days. It doesn't seem like it's the lowest game prices ever, though, and we've already mentioned that SteamDB still gives you more information and is a better experience, and you can just install the SteamDB extension for Chrome or Firefox, and do that anywhere around the world. Let's see. BioWare to offload Star Wars The Old Republic to refocus on a single-player game. That is a different way to phrase it. It felt like to me that they were being taken off the project. Return of BioWare's key franchise may require it to stop working on Star Wars MMO in development. It's developed for 12 years. So I guess the Old Republic is just an MMO that has been going for 12 years. And now they're giving it choose another, or they're being assigned to a different project and somebody else is being assigned to take care of the MMO, which does not speak well to the health of the MMO. It very possibly could be shut down in the next few years or even months. High-res veterans unveil a new studio to support live service game developers, which honestly I'm not an expert on this thought, but I would assume if you're trying to make a company that is literally just going to be a support company for live service developers, you're going to eventually become irrelevant. People will move on from live service to the next buzzword, NFTs, Web3, blockchain, whatever the next buzzword is, AI, and you'll be stuck holding the bag, as it were, when live service is just not something people care about focusing on as much, and or new studios just don't need a third-party service to help them with live service functions. Yep. That is definitely not the company I would want to work with too, where you're basically doing nothing creative. You're never creating a game that you could have your credits in proudly, or anything that can build your portfolio. Moving on, Octopath Traveler 2 has sold 1 million copies in 3.5 months. Let's see, after 2 years, Paradox refunds Vampire Bloodlines 2 pre-orders. I didn't realize it had been 2 years, so it's only right at that point that they refund. But yeah, clearly Bloodlines 2 is in development hell, which is maybe better than them just shoving out yet another Vampire the Masquerade game that's not in any way good. Alright, so now we're getting into the may contain adult content section with the Steam Fall List cleanup. This Golden Light Rose. Gods from the Abyss. Hey, it looks to me like we may finally have gotten to a point where adult games are blurring their thumbnails outside of their own page. So maybe it just took Valve a really long time to implement that system, and it may be blurring the games for more than just the adult section games too, because not all of these names scream adult. Now this is on my fall list that we're looking at right now, so they may still not have implemented this on the default search. Like this Golden Light of Rose as a game is no longer available on Steam, and it doesn't look like it's an adult game. It just looks like it's a horror game. Of course, I have to take it off if it's no longer available. Let's see what this news says. This is a prologue game, and so they've gotten rid of the prologue, which that seems weird, to in favor have the full version. which I feel like that it just inherently admits that there's a cross-contamination of having prologue versions that aren't clearly labeled as demos. And that's a problem with Steam's interface in a lot of ways. Some nudity or sexual content, frequent gore and violence, general mature content. So, some nudity, but not in the adult section. We will go ahead and put this on the wish list. It is a kind of weird game, though, so I can see myself not being super interested in that. And then I just jumped all around. Yeah. Probably because I had a duplicate tab. Next we have Golden Gloves from February of 2023, which is still early access and has no reviews. I'll give it some more time as a boxing VR game, but I probably should not. Next we have... Why is this jumping all over the place? Oh, we have a game called Fly here from June 6th. Yeah, I don't know what's causing the jumping around. And if I jump around a bunch, I guess I should leave the interstitial articles as separators. That would help me as a marker. Like Golden Force here, we say no to. Going into the unknown, we have to say no to. But yeah, if I jump around, then I don't know if I'm looking at new games versus whether I'm looking at old games. I don't know why it's jumping around though. What would cause that to happen? I'm having to work my way around. Like Gods of the Sands from 2022. We can say no to that. And see, you would think I just middle clicked, so if it was going to jump around after that middle click, it would be that point. Gods from the Abyss, I'll give more time. See, that time I middle clicked also, and no real problem there. Godlike Burger. I feel like this is just a restaurant game, time management, resource management game. It doesn't look terrible, although it does seem like it has a weird narrative behind also its resource management experience. But yeah, it seems like there's a weird twist here where you kill the customers and turn them into new burgers. Seems like maybe there's different rounds. Yeah, it sounds weird, but I think I'm gonna say no to this, because at the end of the day, it's still gonna be a cooking, time management, resource management game, and the gimmick is just not big enough to make me want to play that type of game. Let's see, next we have Godless, which looks like it's just irrelevant with not enough reviews. And it's been given enough time. Pretty much anything from 2022 at this point has been given enough time. Godfall Ultimate Edition is mixed, so I think we say no to that. God Beast Mark II. Buy games with God in the name. It's not relevant. Not enough reviews. Alright. So at that point, this should be our search. And I still don't have that interstitial. I don't think I fixed that. Did I? No, I didn't. So there should be a divider, a slide screen in between that point. So at this point, there should be adult games on this search that would be blurred. But see, here you have Sex Simulator, Futanari BDSM, and you can see the screenshot is not blurred. So why is the system working as far as blurring on your follow list, but not working on the search list? One way or the other, they should either all be blurred or none of it's blurred. I could see saying, hey, check this extra box to not blur games in search results and on your follow list, or uncheck this box and you still will get blurred thumbnails. But yeah, it is very weird for it to be inconsistent. Generally, I think it should be blurred until you click directly on that one page, and even on that one page, it would make a lot of sense to have it blurred until you click to unblur it, and that you just have to consistently click unblur, and I am over 18 effectively. Something that says click here to confirm you're over 18 and willing to see adult content. Something like that over each picture, each screenshot, before anything is shown at all. Or you get one click at least when you go to the page. This Gamefly does not look like anything. Corpo Nation, the prologue. There clearly is something in Valve's instructions to telling people to use the phrase prologue over and over again, since almost everybody is using it. We have a platforming frustration game. Not really my style of game, and that's going to lead me to not make YouTube shorts around it. Which maybe that's unfair, but it's my choice that I'm making at least now. Nauseous Weeds prologue. I think also we can say no to anything that has prologue in the name. This zombie soup already is on the follow list, so I know I've already made a YouTube short around it. And it's already positive, so I could certainly go ahead and put it on the wish list, but I'll just wait. Loop 8 Summer of the Gods, unfortunately, is mixed, but I'm going to give it a follow anyways, just to see if maybe it gets better reviews. It may very well not get better reviews. Loop 8 has potential to be incredibly intriguing, but it never quite connects and ultimately lacks emotional impact. An original mix of gameplay styles and ideas, but repetitive and frustration makes the experience tedious. Well, I'll stick with my idea and wait until we get to 30 reviews, but it does not look good for Loop 8. Even though Loop 8 definitely advertised itself and tried to hype itself up as much as possible. I'm going to say no to that. Sir Ball Up is just a spin-off on Jump King, which, yeah, I just don't think this is my style of game either, so I'm not going to promote it either. Beyond the Evil looks like it's just an asset flip horror game. I'm not really seeing any actual gameplay. It's one of those cases where watching the trailer might give me some more information, but it does just kind of seem like there isn't much of anything. I'll be generous. I don't need to agonize over decisions. Search and rescue. It's a turn-based strategy game. It looks very ugly, so I'm going to say no. The Pista, also no. And then here we have our first adult game called Melancholy Date. 3D CGI lady with pink hair in a match 3 game. Generic colored backgrounds or just black backgrounds. Definitely doesn't really feel like there's a lot of polish here. And while there are 2 girls being depicted on this thumbnail, this is the only girl in any of the screenshots. So $4.49, English only. I just question whether there's even any adult content in this game at all. There probably is, but seeing none of it in the screenshots makes it uninteresting to buy. I am speculating that perhaps we are at a point where new games submitted to Steam are not allowing for adult content in the screenshots. That might be the case, and that might drastically change how easy it is to evaluate games by making it a lot more difficult. This next game is also in the adult section. It's $3.99 English, Japanese, and Chinese, but I'm not sure if it has any adult games sections. Apparently it's a 3D monster shooter as far as what the video is showing, and then it seems like there's just a gym section with nudity that is completely disconnected to the 3D monster shooting part, and there's literally only one screenshot showing the gym section. So yeah, doesn't look very visually polished or thought out as a game with adult content or as a game in general, and that would break from the idea that there can be no adult content on the adult pages. Maybe there's a limitation on how many screenshots can have nudity. I don't know why you'd have that specific limit though. Either all or nothing would make a lot more sense. This looks like an RPG Maker nothing game. And there's just no telling how many more games there are to look at. 4X real-time strategy game with in-app purchases. Base of War. Looks like a mobile game port. That's going to be a no. Starlights is a anthropomorphic animals game that is Korean only. So it's interesting that I'm seeing so much English when it says it doesn't support English. Yep. It looks like it is just like a Beastars inspired visual novel, which Beastars anime is a couple years old at this point, or just a furry visual novel in general. So can't do anything with that. Tokyo Pinball. Game designed to introduce the fun of pinball, it says. I'm probably just too advanced of a pinball player to say yes to this. Also, I guess the game is not widescreen when it should have something there. Overall, just doesn't have a lot of polish. In a lot of ways, this feels more like one of those Game Boy Kirby Spinball spin-offs of pinballs where you could control the character, and it wasn't a pure pinball experience. It never really tried to be. Sonic Spinball is definitely like that too, where it's not 100% a pinball experience. Yeah, I'm gonna say no to that. Viking Heroes 4 is a management game. Now the problem with saying no to making a YouTube short around this is that there are so many of these. I suspect people actually do like them well enough that they keep making them. So it would make sense to make a YouTube short around it, even if it's not my style of game. Battle Grid. Of course, then you start going down that slippery slope, and then I'm saying yes to everything. So you make a grid of characters, and then you make a top-down twin-stick shooter experience by controlling the entire grid. That's an interesting idea as far as you're making a formation of characters. I'll give that a chance. And then here's that adult game, Sex Simulator Futanari BDSM. One of the girls does look like a Futanari, a dick girl, hermaphrodite. I assume it's natural. Hermaphrodite's not transitioned. The other girl looks very much just like a cis female. And this is basically the exact same furniture and the exact same room that we've seen in other sex simulator games with BDSM in it. It's selling for $2.09, but you can see that, well, you can't see, there's a bundle here for like 86 other sex simulator games that are selling at 74% off for $60. So you're not really going to get a lot of good content from these games. It says it has 90 plus HD quality renders and HD animations. It's decent asset flip 3D CGI models, but I just don't think that there's too much here. The problem with anything that's called a simulator is that you would expect there to be one simulator that could do everything, not a constant flow of other simulators that can do slightly different things. So yeah, if for any kind of game, if you're going to make a simulator of that type of game, it should be the one simulator to rule them all. Here we have a hidden object game, it looks like, called Finding Fate. We'll give that a chance. And then Medieval Simulators Tavern. Doesn't look visually polished enough. Game just called Chemical, which doesn't look polished enough. Game called Chasing Rabbits in the Snow, which doesn't look like anything. Zodiac or Zodiac Reform Bandage Rewind. That is a mouthful of random words. There might be something here of interest as a game, though. Here we have a game called Hentai Mission Bombast, which this is clearly a low effort asset flip with the 3D anime girls in military outfits wearing a military vest but no shirt, so you get a lot of side boob and they're just shooting each other. You have like Biden and Putin and pictures of a bunch of celebrities here on the thumbnail. So yeah, this is clearly a joke troll game of no real quality, being led into the adult section and selling for $1.19. English, Russian, Ukrainian, so I assume this is a Russian troll game. Yeah. So yeah. Here we have Jigsaw Puzzle Anime Girls, which just looks like an assortment of kind of ugly anime pictures. Rogue Dungeon. Looks too much like an old school dungeon game. As I was listening to somebody talk about Dungeons and Dragons, if I was ever to actually have anybody that I could join a group with, which is almost certainly never going to happen, plus I really would never have the time for it. But someone was definitely making the point that a lot of people like those tabletop RPGs specifically because they aren't video games. And so it is very possible that somebody who was big into video games or grown up have grown up playing video games like me may not really enjoy tabletop RPG games. This Espresso Tycoon feels like it's all over the place. It's got some really interesting espressos or other kinds of premium coffees as an idea, but then there's just a lot of screenshots of decorating your coffee house. And the weirdest part about this is you've got this trailer in which it's zombie people, and then they either drink the espressos and stop being a zombie, or they're just joking around in the trailer. I don't know if people should be ambitious to want to own their own coffee house. Like, I think people that are addicted to coffee think of the idea that they want to own a coffee house. But I think in realistic ways of thinking, competing against Starbucks is kind of crazy, and running a coffee house is probably a pretty difficult business. That you just have to get a lot of people in and out, I imagine, and have a lot of really underpaid staff for it to make any financial sense. That being said, this would be an interesting YouTube short, so I'm gonna do that and give it a follow just in case I want to think about it some more. Brain Show here. It looks like a decent quiz game. English, Polish. Yeah. I guess I'll give this a chance. Bunker Builder Simulator Prologue. Well, I'm not interested in the prologue. I am somewhat interested in the idea of building a bunker. In particular, if you're going to build a bunker, though, you basically need a giant hole in the ground to start off with, otherwise you're going to spend way too much money digging the hole before you even start pouring the concrete and building more. It is really a rich person's game to build a bunker. You need a lot of space, and ideally you would want a mountain or cave to start off in, something that has already been mined. Even an abandoned mine makes a lot of sense for a bunker more than just building a bunker straight. Free to play VR party brawler. Do I feel like this might be something? It might be. Let's make a YouTube short around it, even though it's a VR game. Yeah, we are definitely going long now. Nocturnal. Feel like we must have already looked at this because it's already on the fall list. Blightlands Blacksmith. a blacksmithing game might be interesting. So I'll give that a thought. How many more games do we have to go through? Seems like a lot still. Arcade classics. Now noticeably, even though we've gone through a lot of games, I've only seen about 3 adult games. It does seem like the number of adult games is reducing to a smaller average. Grand Empress Prologue. Time travel through history to become God. Mixed reviews already. I'm going to say no to that. Almost done. Here we have an adult game called Arcana Heat and Cold Stories. This is flat 2D animation of more of an anime style. You have a blonde elf with light skin and a blue silver haired elf with dark skin. Unfortunately, this does look like just another RPG Maker game. It does look like you have a lot more adult content and variety in the characters than what you usually would see. So I assume the elf characters with the phrase heat and cold, one of them is maybe a fire sprite and one of them is maybe an ice sprite. There is a style in which they're showing the adult content in segments instead of having one scene, one picture, one angle taking up the whole screen. You're getting a more comic book panel presentation, which is a little weird. But otherwise, Arcana Hot and Cold, Heat and Cold, is $3.39, and they already have a Season 2 and a side game. I guess Arcana Heat and Cold, Stories is the name of this, and there is another game called Arcana Heat and Cold. Let's see. So, what is are there any reviews on that? Yeah. Arcana Heat and Cold, the original game, is rated 95% positive with 166 reviews, and this came out in October 6th of 2020. So you kind of have a long-running series of RPG Maker games with a Season 1 and Season 2 and now stories. So it's English and Russian as far as the language supports, which is a little bit weird. So you have some stuff that's a little off. It says there's no grind, no penalties for the sake of artificially stretching out the game, and no pixel hunting. It says there's 5 chapters in this season. So seems like there might be a little bit of quality here, if that's what you're looking for, is something that looks like an 8-bit or even 16-bit RPG game that has adult content in it. I don't know if I'm really looking for that type of game though. And if anything, I'm starting to suspect that Russian companies have somehow figured out a way to put Russian games on Steam at once again to try and either launder money or just gain funding, which it has nothing to do with video games, but apparently Russia just bombed a big dam and caused a massive amount of flooding and is now shooting people trying to repair the dam, so that they're just like desperately trying to create a natural disaster. Which Russia was also accused of trying to set off another Chernobyl-style nuclear leak by shooting missiles near a nuclear reactor in Ukraine. So, yeah, it does seem like they are desperately doing everything. And I don't want to give them any ideas, but I'm a little surprised that there hasn't been an attempt to release a new style of COVID, or just take COVID as it is and try and spread it as much as possible to make people sick. Germ warfare is a war crime, but so is attacking civilians and many of the other things that Russia has been accused of doing. And I'm not sure that Ukraine hasn't done some of it too. It would be a matter of scale, certainly. The steam engine simulator looks interesting, but I question if this isn't just a free version of an app that's been shown off on a YouTube channel. Yeah, it seems like they're just promoting this YouTube video. But I don't even know if this Ectorom software has anything to do with Angie the Great or their YouTube channel, or if they're just taking some open source software and putting it on Steam for free. Which I guess if you're putting it on Steam for free, you're probably only committing small bits of fraudulence when you're representing yourself as the developer and publisher, if you actually aren't the developer and publisher. Yeah. I would assume that Valve probably says you cannot put open source games, or games that you don't have exclusive licensing or publishing rights to, on their storefront. Otherwise, we would have seen a lot of open source software being listed on Steam Direct. Like, let's assume ScumVM as a software is fully open source, and you can in its license publish it, or publish your own version of it. If that was good enough for Valve, we would have seen a lot of different versions of ScumVM, and then there would have been multiple ScumVMs showing up in search engines. And we've just never seen anything like that for any software. That being said, this is software, and Valve, for the most part, only wants games, not software. Yeah. This game doesn't look very interesting. Good news is we only have a couple more games to go through, and yeah, we'll give Shenanigans here a chance, and that'll bring us to the end of the show. So yeah, I kind of failed miserably here, and then I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the stream, and I should have just planned ahead a lot better to know that this was going to be a long one. And it very possibly will be just as long on Friday, with all these announcements potentially coming out. So yeah, sorry about that. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a bunch of links down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.